Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto finds fairy temple inheritance in fairy tale. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Ghost4321 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Warad Sequin, one of the 10 wizard saints, also known as the 4th heavenly king of Ishtar. Once one of the founding members of the Mage Guild, Fairy Tale, he now lives along the mountains of Fiori, overlooking the coastline. He was known for his ability to connect with nature, using its energy to enhance his own magic, which is called green magic. Several years after perfecting what he called sage mode, he attained an even higher connection with it, allowing him to stop the growth of deserts, sense humans from half was across the continent, and strengthen his body, spirit and magic. After perfecting his sensing ability, he was able to sense a whole new continent far across the ocean, that held humans that had a weird power within them. Not even able to see the continent, he decided to forget about it, until he sensed a small and young life force slowly drifting towards the shores. As it eventually landed on the shore, which he was already on the shores ready to help whatever it was, he noticed it was a small boy that didn't have the ability to use magic. But this other energy he sensed was practically leaking out of his body. What really astonished him was the fact that this young brown-haired boy had a connection with nature similar to his own chakra, which can be and is just as, if not more, destructive and helpful as magic. After taking care of the young man, and learning everything he could, he decided to try and use his archive magic to translate his green magic down on scrolls, from magic to chakra, so he could at least give the boy something in return for his information. The young man, after generously accepting the scrolls and learning from them, having decided to call it Mokutan, said it was time for him to go back home, which Warad learned was called the Elemental Nations, specifically Hai no Kuni. Thanking his savior one last time, and leaving him some scrolls on the basics of chakra among other things, the young man set off, dashing along the surface of the ocean. Later switching to a wooden raft he made himself, which was held in a sealing scroll. Warad, now in his very elderly years, yet still full of energy from his connection with nature, was sitting in his house, reading a paper with one hand while watering his plants with the other, before putting the paper and tin watering can down as he turned his head to look out the window. A wave of nostalgia hit him as he felt a familiar life force slowly coming towards the coastline. After focusing on it for another few moments, his eyes shot wide open as he quickly shot up and rushed out of his home only to dash down to the coast. The life force he felt was slowly fading, realizing that there was another life force that was tied to his, barely hanging on as if willing whatever it belonged to last for just a moment longer. Arriving on the coastline, and noticing what he sensed was a young blonde-haired boy who looked to be about 12 years old. His clothes, which consisted of orange jumpsuit pants, sandals, and a matching orange jacket, were all torn to shreds, soaked and covered in blood. Quickly getting closer, he turned the boy on his back, only to stare at his eyes, which were red and had a slit in them, before holding his ground as the young boy talked in a voice that seemed demonic, yet held a caring tone. Normally, he wouldn't even be near a demon, as they reminded him of someone that hurt his best friends. Yet something compelled him to stay and stare down whatever this was. Please save and take care of my kit. Warad noticed that whatever it was that talked, belonged to the second life force that was connected to the boys. Nodding his head, he spoke to whatever it was. I will, you have my word. As he finished speaking, the soul that was connected to the boys faded away completely. The boy's life force continued to fade until it suddenly stopped at what seemed like could be considered as close to death's door one can get without dying. Wiping the sweat off his brow, Warad finally noticed that the boy's chest stopped moving and was bandaged. The blood on his clothes seemed to originate from his chest under the wraps. Putting both his hands on the boy's chest, he briefly and calmly channeled some of his magic into the boy to stabilize his life and get him breathing again. Another ability his high connection with nature gave him was the ability to stabilize life and create new greenery. After finally getting the boy breathing again, he gently picked him up and quickly headed to his house. Walking through his front door, quickly heading down the hallway before heading into his guest room, he gently placed the boy down on the bed. Deciding to change his clothes and bandages so he wouldn't get a cold and infection, he left to get everything. A few minutes later, and the young boy was cleaned and quietly sleeping in the bed. Finally having a chance to get a good look at the boy, he noticed that the young boy had 3 marks on both his cheeks, not unlike a fox's whiskers, giving the boy a kind of feral look. Taking his hand, he very gently opened his eyes, seeing that they were a dull blue, almost like all the life has left them. His spiky blonde hair that seemed to be almost golden, laid, matted to his head as the young boy slept. Must be a lady killer back in the nations, he thought, not knowing anything about the boy, which irked him. Normally, he was a very cheery person, cracking jokes at every chance he could get, reveling in his memories and past friendships. But something about this boy, something about the boy's energy felt wrong. It felt as though he was lonely, yearning for something almost. Deciding to take a peek into his memories to find out who he was, remembering when he did it to the young Hashirama, he actually thought it was pretty awesome and wanted to learn it himself. Figuring this young one would be the same gave him a smile. Readying his magic, he brought his hand to the young blonde's forehead and began visual make. Focusing his magic towards the young blonde's forehead, he closed his eyes as he began to delve into his memories. Opening his eyes, looking down at a village as his body seemingly floated in the air, he noticed it was very big and lively. Remembering almost immediately his conversations with a young Hashirama about wanting a village, one that anyone can come to for peace, one where he could call his own, one giant family. Taking a look around the village below him, and noticing a face chipped out of the mountainside that resembled him, he smiled. It seems you achieved your dream, Hashi boy. As he looked down from his height above the village, he noticed what seemed like an academy, children flowing out of the entrance heading towards their parents that were waiting for them. Smiling at the sight of their family moments, he realized the young boy that was currently resting in his house wasn't down there with his parents, let alone any family. Taking a look around the immediate area of the school, he noticed a large tree that reminded him of Hashirama. Looking under the tree, there he was, a young-looking blonde boy, whisker marks along his cheeks as he sat on the swing that hung from one of the great branches of the tree. Looking closer at the younger version of the boy, he noticed he was staring at the families as they greeted their children, asking them about their day, if they made any new friends. Longing. The boy wants a family, does he not have one? His question was answered as he saw the young blonde hop off the swing and walk away, his face quickly showing a smile as he ran off into the village. Watching the young blonde run off with a fake smile tore at his old heart. Something that hasn't happened in a while, other than when he remembers the fun times at Fairy Tale. But this was different, something was telling him to help the boy. Blinking as the scene changed again, only to find himself in what looked to be a food store. Noticing that he was now standing in a convenience store, he started walking around, looking at everything that was available. Hearing a bell that announced a new customer, he wasn't surprised to see a younger version of the blonde he rescued walk into the store. With a fake smile he noted. Looking over to the clerk, he could see a scowl on his face as he watched the blonde walk through his store. Walking over to the young blonde, he watched as he picked up a couple cases of ramen and a gallon of milk before following him to the counter. His eyes narrowing at the price the clerk rang up after taking the blonde's items. That's several times overpriced, he thought with a scowl as he saw the clerk smile and receive the money from said blonde who still had that fake smile on his face. Thanks, mister, the younger version of the blonde said as he ran out the store with bags of what he bought. Taking one last glance towards the store clerk before he walked outside intent on following the blonde. Seeing the blonde walking down the road with his head up and the fake smile still on his face, he followed him again, passing through several people as he walked. Taking several looks of the village Hashi boy dreamed of as he followed the young blonde, he smiled. You really did create a village Hashi boy, he thought before noticing several, if not everybody that the blonde walked by totally ignore him. Not even acknowledging his presence, other than the hateful stares he got when he passed by some stores, everyone else seemingly ignored him. To ignore a child of all things, one that hasn't even done anything in his life to garner this. Hashi boy, you would be sad to see this. After watching the young blonde walk into his apartment, he was genuinely surprised when he walked through the walls and saw that he was the only person who lived there. All over his walls were graffiti, and the flooring was starting to rot. Taking a look at his door, he noticed the small window at the top was cracked just enough to let the air in. The door handle looked to be about to fall apart. Sighing as he had seen enough, he stopped the flow of his magic. Opening his eyes to his familiar guest room, he sighed. How could a village just ignore a child completely like that? Hateful glares, overpriced groceries as well as just plain being ignored. Not to mention the boy had a mask that showed him as a cheerful young boy always smiling. Deep down, he knew the boy was in pain that he was just ignoring, pain that would someday burst out, and the unlucky soul that's in front of him would take the brunt of it. Looks like you could use someone in your life, young one, he said as the sun finally went down beyond the ocean, letting the beautiful sunset race across the ocean. I need to get some sleep, hopefully the young boy will wake tomorrow. Getting up from his chair, he reached for one of his watering cans. But first, I'm going to let you guys dry up, wahahaha, he said as his hand put the watering can down before speaking again, in a more silent tone, careful not to wake up the sleeping boy. It's a joke. It's a joke. Of course I'll water you. I owe my life to you anyway, he said as he spoke to the plants scattered around his home. I know I will help him, I won't let him break, he mumbled towards the plants, which seemed to glow in the setting sun's rays, as if responding to his words. I've always wanted a son. As the sun slowly rose from across the mountains in the distance, Naruto slowly cursed as the rays that pierced through the thin blinds hit his face. Always having a problem with the sun, as he never had blinds in his room, at least working blinds. Though these seemed to not be as bright, he realized his body was a lot better than yesterday though his chest still hurt. Remembering everything he went through, he fought to hold back tears. Though he failed to hold back the giant dam that was built up ever since he was 4 years old, having never shed another tear since. The dam finally broke when he remembered what the Kurama, had told him. The only being that hasn't seriously lied to him since he was born. The only being that's been with him through thick and thin. The only being that even talked to him on a regular basis. Albeit he was very condescending towards him and often got very angry, left his body, left his soul. Even the Shikifuin that tied him to his soul was gone. Disappeared. XXX flashback XXX. Directly after he had passed out from his blood hitting the floor of his closet which lit up in a seal, he was pulled into his mindscape. Deciding to wonder why he appeared here later, he slowly walked towards the fox. Hopefully he would have answers as to why he was pulled here. Eventually standing in front of giant gates with the kanji 4 seal in the middle of them that looked to be eroding as he stood there. Behind the bars 2 eyes light up the tan sewers that was his mindscape, though they weren't as vivid as they usually were. Remembering the fox's eyes and comparing them to the way they were now, he felt as if something bad was happening. Walking closer to the seal, stopping briefly as the gates finally faded away into nothingness, the glowing red eyes with slits in them started to move as a silhouette of a giant fox appeared out from the tanness. The sight usually scared him, but this sight was different. The QB looked to be tired, totally spent. What seemed like sweat was pouring down his body. As the two stared at each other, both could see something was wrong with the other. QB was extremely tired, and somewhat ethereal. Naruto, in the QB's eyes, was almost completely broken. It pained his heart to see someone so young being subject to the reality of the world, as even though he was a being made of pure chakra, he was the head of the Fox clan. The clan itself never hurt, abused, or even talked with anger in their voice in the presence of their kids. This habit eventually rubbed off on him after hundreds or so years being with the clan. Kit, you finally came. Pan, I don't know how much longer I have. The QB's booming voice echoed throughout the small sewer, the water shaking with each syllable. QB. Naruto wheezed out. Even inside his mind, his chest still hurt to talk. Each breath even hurt him a little, though he would push through this just like everything else. What happened? Why am I here? Managing to finish his question, he quickly grabbed onto his chest. Even as he left the hospital, his body was still in immense pain. The council meeting was just helping the pain grow, though no one in the council room even cared for that matter in his eyes. Even though he noticed that QB was beginning to fade, he hoped that it was all just a dream. That everything that happened before he passed out was just a dream, a bad dream. You activated a seal in your room while trying to get those abominations you call awesome. The seal summoned you to the mountains of Tetsu no Kuni. His voice was wavering, barely holding on as he talked. But QB needed to tell him everything that happened. That he has a new chance at a happy life. I see. His head down as he replied. He was in Tetsu no Kuni. Away from Konoha, the very same village he promised to protect, yet they spit on him. The very same village that he wanted to the Kage of, the very village that directed their hate towards him every day of his life. The very village that constantly tries to break him. He's finally away from that damned village. No more hate-filled glares. No more overpriced everything. When something happens that you would think would make someone very happy, ecstatic even, doesn't manage to do anything to the person, something's wrong with them. You'd think that finally getting away from a village that wanted nothing for you but to be broken and beaten, would make said person happy. In most cases it would, but for Naruto it didn't. Nothing else mattered to him. His dream was shattered. So what now? His head back up facing QB, though his face was devoid of any emotions. Seeing this, QB sighed, still trying to will himself to stay connected to his kit as he felt someone powerful quickly arrive next to Naruto. Sensing nothing but worry in said person, QB prepared to send some of his conscious to take over Naruto's body and ask for who or whatever it was that arrived next to his unconscious body to help. Not wanting his already dying Kit to die. That's not even the worst part of it, Kit, he said, his voice no longer causing the water to ripple and vibrate while his body became even more see-through as the cage finally disappeared. As the words left his mouth, fully catching Naruto's attention, he spoke again, regret lacing his once proud voice. The seal you activated, even though it summoned you to Tetsu no Kuni, the seal on that end was never finished. As you arrived on the scene, the build-up of chakra erupted, resolving into a giant explosion that shot you through the mountains and across the ocean, eventually landing in the open sea. The explosion itself was enough to kill you, but having me inside you was a benefit, as my chakra immediately healed you. The explosion wasn't the problem, no. The problem comes from my father and the barrier he set up around the elemental nations. Resting for a moment and letting everything sink into the young Uzumaki, he spoke again, wanting to get everything he has to say out of the way. The seal my father created was a time-space seal. It separated the supercontinent known as the elemental nations from the rest of the world. As we hit it, the force of the explosion along with my chakra that was quickly and violently covering you to heal and protect you met, resulting in a hole appearing in the barrier, allowing us to pass through. As you were flying and eventually landed in the ocean, the current carried your body to another great landmass. I have no idea what its name is though, he finished as his breaths became more and more constant. Seeing Naruto stare at him, and about to ask the question, he spoke again. The reason you didn't drown and your bones didn't break was because I was constantly using my chakra to keep you above the water and heal your body. Frantically trying to get everything said that needed to be as he felt the figure next to Naruto's body not back away when he was met with Kyuubi's eyes. So we're not in the elemental nations anymore? Naruto asked with a small amount of relief in his voice. Not wanting anything to do with that world anymore, he figured this was better. Though he would never see Nico-san or Shizune anymore, he couldn't think of anyone else as the last person who earned his respect and love seemed to stop caring during the council meeting that would decide his fate. No, and if I were to guess, I'd say this place would be better. He finished as his body started to disappear from the tip of his tails. Watching Naruto as he finally noticed this, felt bad. What's happening? What's wrong with your tails? His voice frantic for the first time in several days. He couldn't lose the very person that's been with him since the beginning. He couldn't lose the last thing that kept him to reality. Seeing his face go through several different emotions rather than just his normal mask, made Kyubi angry. Angry at Kushina for not fighting harder to take both of her twins from Konoha. Angry at the village for directing their hate towards him. Angry at everything that his kid has gone through. Tears slowly started to stream down both their faces as Naruto finally figured out what happened. Why the gate had disappeared, and why Kyubi was disappearing. Don't worry, kid. If it makes you feel any better, all my chakra that I used to keep you alive was absorbed into your body. If I had to say anything, I'd say you're in the same league of Hashirama chakra-wise. No, you definitely have more than he did, not taking into account his prime and natural energy. Kyubi said, trying to lift the mood, though his tears wouldn't stop coming down his eyes. Damn the Fox clan, his mate rubbed off on him too much. He would never have gotten close to Naruto if not for her and the rest of the clan. Seeing as Naruto didn't budge from that, he figured he better come out with it. Stop crying, Naruto. I sacrificed myself for you. Think of this as a new chance at life. Forget about the leaf, start anew. I know this old man will take care of you for me. The toad shouldn't be able to summon him back, good. As he continued to speak, more and more of his body seemingly vanished from sight. It wasn't long until only his upper body was left. Staring down at Naruto, who was in tears at this moment, he sighed. Don't leave me. You can't. You're the only one that stayed with me, that listens. That truly cares. Naruto was on his knees as the tears just kept coming, kept raining down. He was losing his only true friend. He was losing his favorite thing in the world, even if the other didn't think much of it. You can't leave me, Kyubi. You're my only family. You're all I have left. You just can't leave me. Selfish. One would call a 12-year-old, who has seen plenty of death and the true nature of the world, selfish for what he was wanting. Selfish. But Naruto and Kyubi thought nothing of it. For once in his life, Naruto was finally being truly selfish. Naruto truly, once and truly left with nothing but a smile and no words to explain the feeling he was feeling right now. For once, the great almighty Kyubi was speechless. Knowing nothing but hate in his years dealing with humans, even in his past 2 containers, both treated him like garbage that needed to be caged up. Yet, just these few words, no. Just these past 8 years dealing with this kid changed him. He wanted to stay with him, he wanted to be there for him, he wanted to protect Naruto. Neither knew it at the time, but this feeling replaced all the hate that was built up in Kyubi. Years upon years of hate towards the human race, all but vanished at the feeling of wanting to be there for Naruto. Kid. Kyubi spoke, as he stretched his right arm out towards Naruto, who looked up as he was called. Seeing the giant fist that was presented in front of him, he smiled, his tears still pouring down his face. Stretching his arm out to meet Kyubi's, their fists bumped. A true smile graced both their faces as they touched. Closing his eyes, Naruto looked down, not wanting to see his best friend and only family disappear from the world. Slowly but surely, Kyubi's body continued to vanish. As if willing it to stay a little longer, Kyubi slowly moved towards Naruto's small body, almost encircling him. Feeling a kind of warmth that was similar to when Nico or Shizen hugged him, but different altogether, he looked up, seeing Kyubi wrap his arm around his small body as his vanished from the world. Kurama. Hearing his voice as he saw the last of what was once the great Kyubi no Kitsune vanish, he smiled as he continued to cry. My name is Kurama, Naruto. Grow up strong and proud, I'm sure we'll see each other again. Completely vanishing from his sight, Naruto's tears grew even more. It's a promise. As he sat there in the sewer crying, for what seemed like forever, he finally stopped. Deciding to leave his mindscape, once and for all. Not to be back again for a while. XXX flashback and XXX. As the tears came down his eyes, he realized this wasn't a dream. Kurama was gone, he wasn't in the elemental nations anymore. After a few minutes his tears stopped, as he put his mask back on, and surveyed the room he was in. Looking down at his body, he noticed someone had replaced his clothes and put new bandages on. Though he still felt weak, that was mainly due to the hole in his chest that still hasn't completely recovered. He still had the necklace around his neck he received from the 5th Hokage, who he lost all faith and respect for during the council meeting. The only reason he never got rid of it was because it was the first, and only gift he ever received. As he went back to looking around the room, taking in all the plants that seemed to line the walls and windowsills, for some strange reason, he felt at peace with all the greenery around him. Feeling closer to nature if one will. Though, he's always felt close to nature when he went into the forests around Konoha with Nico-san. It always made him feel stronger, and it felt like he always had someone or something at his side. But in this room, it felt as if the air around him was hugging him, telling him everything was alright. Getting lost in the feeling of nature that surrounded him, he never noticed the door to his room open. His crying alerted his savior, though the plants did the same thing. Warad, who started to rush towards his guest room at the sound of the young boy's crying, slowed down once the plants around his house said everything was alright, at least physically. Slowing down to a walk, he approached the door and opened it. The sight he was greeted with was one that he hasn't seen since Hashi Boy arrived on the continent. He could tell that the natural energy that was in the room was surrounding the boy, hugging every part of his body. It was a good thing, as it would also help with his recovery. Deciding to get the greetings going, he coughed into his hand as he smiled at the young boy who looked towards him. Naruto, who was too busy with this new feeling, heard the cough and his body abruptly jumped in the bed. Quickly turning his head towards the door, he was greeted with the sight of what looked to be an elderly man that had a tree growing from his head. Yet the man exuded an aura of warmth, similar to the feeling he got during the very last moments with Kurama. Deciding to not do anything but stare at the elderly man as he was still in too much pain to move very fast, and he had a feeling that he wouldn't get very far anyway. Deciding to end the staring contest between the two, Warad spoke up, very curious as to just who this boy is and why he had to go through everything in that village, though he wouldn't tell him that he looked at a few of his memories. So what a terrible morning it is. Bending over and bowing to the young blonde who just sat there and stared at him with a blank face before sighing again. I can tell you won't like my jokes, young one. Taking a moment to get a better look at the young boy in the bed, as even though he had cleaned him from head to toe, he still never took a good look at his eyes and figure. He could tell that he was partially malnourished, not knowing that Shizen was trying her best to get his body in tip-top shape. His chest was still healing. He could tell the boy wouldn't be able to move about a lot for another day or so, maybe even less if his connection with nature stayed this high. Good morning, young man. My name is Warad Sequin. I found you on the beach, washed ashore. So I brought you up to my house where I changed your clothes as they were soaked, and tended to your wounds, giving them new bandages while making sure you didn't have any infections. Right now you are currently in my guest room. He finished as he watched Naruto lift the sheets up to see a pair of brown jumpsuit pants that stopped halfway down his legs. His chest was uncovered, not counting the bandages. As Naruto lifted his head back up towards his savior, he gave a fake smile as he spoke. Thanks, GG. Already knowing about the young boy's mask to hide his true feelings, he sighed. Wanting to know his name, he spoke again, as he walked over towards the windowsill, pulling a watering can out of nowhere and started watering the flowers. Care to tell me your name, young one? It's not every day that I find people washed up along the shores beaten, bloody and dying. Getting right to the point, though his tone wasn't hard, it was more of a gentle tone that Naruto felt calm hearing. Remembering the few classes he was allowed to stay in during his academy days, he remembered telling people fake names and giving out false information, one of the very few things he remembered as he was constantly kicked out of classes. He thought about lying to this man, but what should he be afraid of? Something about the elder man in front of him just made him feel safe, that everything would be alright. Deciding to just tell the man his name, as what could possibly go wrong in his situation. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, former genin of Konoha. Finishing with his head down, Warad noticed the natural energy continued to surround him, trying to enter his body and strengthen him, give him hope. Smiling, as the young man in front of him surrounded by the nature reminded him of Hashirama even more. Well, Naruto-kun, I've never heard of this Konoha before. Mind telling me where it is? He finished, smiling down at the boy who just kept his fake smile up. It's far away from here. Staring down at his hands which gripped onto the sheets that still covered his legs, he fought to keep back tears as the thought of Konoha reminded him of Kurama. I don't want to go back. He finished, tears threatening to come out. Deciding to dig even more, wanting to break his mask and get little Naruto to open up, Warad spoke with confidence. Really? May I ask why, Naruto-kun? As those words left his lips, he hesitated. But something about this man, and the feeling he got from him, and the air around him just made him want to tell him. Something urged him, something told him that it was all right. Sighing, while a few tears leaked from his eyes, he asked Warad if he really wanted to know everything. Everything about his life, everything that happened. Warad, who heard him, just smiled and spoke. I'm sure. If it's bad, I'm sure if you let it out, you'll feel better. At those words, Naruto just nodded and began his story, telling him about the orphanage, and how he owned his own home at the age of 5. How on every October 10th, his birthday, he would be alone, with only Nico and Old Man Hokage appearing to wish him a happy birthday. To his first day of school, and how every day after, he would wait and watch all the other children meet their parents after school before walking away to his home. About his first mission, and how he learned more of the truth of the shinobi world. All the adventures he had leading up to the Chunin exams, and how unprepared himself and his team was. How the invasion happened to stopping the Ichibai, searching for Tsunade to become the 5th Hokage as the 4th step down, to the adventure to Snow Country and falling in love with Koiki Kazuhana, to going after and retrieving Sasuke, to being excommunicated from the very village he vowed to become the leader of. About how much hate he had to take in from the same village, and how he developed a mask to hide his hurt from everyone. And finally he spoke about Kurama, his one and true friend and family. About how he disappeared, saving his life. At the end of the story, it was already noon, as both their stomachs rumbled. But before either of them got up to get some food, Warad spoke, remembering the memories he saw from him last night, and getting the rest of his story just now. He had decided it, though he decided it last night as well. Confirming everything, he was sure he was making the right choice. I have a proposition for you, Naruto-kun. He spoke, catching Naruto's attention, who was feeling a little better getting everything off his chest, though his tears were still there. How about this, Naruboy? I'll teach you. I'll be there for you. If you'll let me, I'll be your friend, your sensei, your brother, even your father. I don't care if you are a demon or an alien. If you'll let me, I'll be there for you. Even if the world goes against you, I'll still be here for you. He stopped as he let everything he just said sink in the young boy in front of him, who was just staring at him with wide eyes, tears streaming down his face. If you'll let me, I'll teach you everything I know about his new continent. I'll fill in all the gaps in your education. I'll teach you everything I know about my magic. I'll be there for you. After he finished talking, the room became quiet. Even the natural energy that radiated towards him and Naruto slowed to a snail's pace as if waiting for Naruto's answer. Said boy was gripping the sheets even tighter as his head was looking down at his lap. Tears dropping from his eyes onto the sheets as he started to shake. As he was listening to the elder man in front of him, he felt something foreign inside his body, his soul. The same feeling when Kurama agreed to become his friend. Finally, he could have another friend, a true friend, someone who wouldn't betray him in the slightest. Someone who would protect him from any kind of danger. Someone to properly teach him, not someone who was always late, or who threw him off cliffs. Someone to call family and spend time with. Slowly the walls that Naruto had began building up since he was 4 were slowly crumbling, breaking apart. The very same walls that the third Hokage, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizun, Nico and I couldn't possibly break through. Slowly getting up from the bed, he walked towards Warad, tears still coming out from his eyes, his fists shaking as he stopped right in front of him. Suddenly he reached out, gripping Warad's clothes like a lost child. He slowly closed the distance between them as he hugged him. Finally, someone other than Kurama to talk to. Someone that wouldn't leave him. Feeling nothing for a few seconds, he thought the older man didn't want a hug. As he was about to back off, he felt a hand on his back before another wrapped around his small frame. The same warmth that Kurama gave him in his last moments, he was feeling now. Family. 10 years later, inside the same house that had saved the 2 kids from the elemental nations, Warad Sequin was calmly sitting down reading his paper and drinking his favorite tea. Plants scattered all around his house, seemingly meshing with the walls. Truth be told, if one were to look at his house from the inside, they would think they were living inside a forest. The plants seemingly hummed as the morning sun lighted the house up through the windows. His house, sitting high on a cliff overlooking the ocean, was quiet. If one were a tiny, small animal in the direct area, said animal would be calmly, yet frantically spazzing out, as small vibrations were going through the land. Sitting down at the table in his living room, he noticed the plants were greener and gave off more energy than usual. Now, normally, people wouldn't even know about the energy plants and most of everything else give off unless one was trained in natural energy, or as Warad likes to call it, sage mode. Noticing they seemed happier, he smirked, as he set the paper down and looked down at his teacup, which shook every so often, ripples appearing from the small vibrations. Closing his eyes and leaning back, a smile formed on his face. You're finally done, I couldn't be more proud. His eyes still closed, he started getting lost in the memories over the past few years. As he leaned back, he started to get lost in his thoughts over the past 10 years. Teaching and becoming closer to Naruto were some of the most joyful moments in his life. The past decade reminded him of his youth. Teaching Naruto everything he knew about Fiori. Teaching him about magic while training him as well. Naruto was the perfect student in his eyes. Determined and strong-minded. Making friends whenever the two went to the different towns. Naruto, like himself, enjoyed the simple things in life, while also making new memories. He truly was like a son to him. As the ground shook, knocking Warad out of his reminiscing, he opened his eyes with a wide smile. Getting up from the table, feeling the happiness from the plants, he walked towards the door. It's been about a year since I sent him on several missions. But he's back, which means he's mastered it. Passing through his living room, taking a quick glance at all the pictures in the room, several with his longtime friend, Makarov Dreyer, while several were of Naruto and Makarov's granddaughter, Alexis Dreyer. Chuckling as he continued walking towards his front door, the memories of those two were quite fun. She always acted like his mean big sister, but was actually one of his best friends. The two were actually quite close after finding out they both had obstacles to overcome. She had a weak body before having the lacrima implanted, while he was recovering from his 12 long years of malnourishment, and being in a new, basically, world. Eventually gaining a rival out of the other, the two sparred whenever she came over with Makarov, promising to get stronger for each other and their friends. Though something worried Naruto when Warad told him what happened to her when Makarov had to banish her father from the guild, becoming distant to all her guild mates, even Makarov himself. She even stopped visiting with Makarov. Naruto, being himself, decided when he finished his training under Warad, he would join the guild his father helped create to extend his family while also finding out what happened to one of his best friends. Warad himself believed Naruto would be able to save Alexis, as he would never give up. Whether it's in a fight or to help someone, his stubbornness was unrelenting. Reaching the door, his smile the brightest it's been in a long time, He opened it before a shadow covered him and his entire house, the smile still beaming on his face. The sight before him reminded him, yet again, of his past, for what stood before him was nothing short of breathtaking. The pure life energy it radiated would send relief to its comrades, while sending fear down the very core of his enemies. Though he himself could create one, the giant before him was several times stronger than any other he would be able to create. Standing before him was what could only be called a force of nature. A giant wooden humanoid golem, that even in his golden years, he wouldn't be able to create. Standing tall over the trees surrounding the house, its height only a sliver of the intensity that could be felt from it. Draped across its shoulders was a trunk-nosed wooden dragon that spiraled its body around the golems, the dragon adding an overall fierce look to its already overwhelming appearance. As he looked at the masterpiece in front of him, he smirked. He could never feel any more proud than he was now. He had a feeling that the nature around him and everywhere the giant before him walked was excited as well. Looking up at the golem's head, his smirk, if possible, increased as he laid his eyes on his adopted son and little brother, casually sitting on the golem's giant nose which dwarfed him. Using his sage mode to get a better look at him, while he sat upon his avatar, he knew Naruto would be a lady killer. As if sensing his father looking up at him, he smirked as he jumped down, off the golem's head, reinforcing his entire body with his chakra as he fell towards the ground to lower the impact. He landed feet first in front of his home, the house he grew up in the past 9 years. Finally finishing the missions his dad gave him and following in his father's footsteps by stopping desertification, he was glad he was home. Walking up to his father, who was staring at him with an expression only a father could give to his son, he stopped a few feet before him. Smiling as he looked at his dad, still had the tree head, the obnoxious clothes on, and still wore the wizard saint medal on his collar. Smirking as he inwardly thought his dad was still the same. "Hey, it's been a while, Pops," Naruto said with excitement laced in his voice. He missed this feeling. The feeling of being home, where one grew up. Though he had the nature wherever he went, nothing could top the feeling of being home. "Yeah. Welcome home, son," Warad said, as he took the chance to get a better look at his son. Naruto, having grown into an adult, stood at an impressive 6 foot. His once sun-kissed blonde hair now turned a shade lighter with forest green tips that flowed down to his mid-back, while 2 thin bangs hung down his face. Hashirama's hairstyle, the whiskers marks that were once on his cheeks disappeared as he grew, fading away as new skin grew over them since his body wasn't influenced by the fox. His entire body looked lean with muscle as he held himself with pride, though jokes could be made about his clothes. His clothes consisted of baggy loose tan blue pants, tape on his left leg holding a pouch which held different scrolls. He was wearing a matching tan blue long-sleeved shirt. If one was looking hard enough they would see a chain mesh framing his upper body under his shirt. Around his neck was a golden chain which had 5 golden bars hanging from it. He had his hands, wrists, and most of his forearms wrapped with the same tape around his leg. Draped across his shoulders was a white long-sleeved haori with blue flames along the bottom. The inside was completely blue while the design had a red fish seemingly swimming across it. His deep ocean blue eyes pierced his soul as he gazed at his father. A giant sealing scroll hung from his lower back, holding the rest of his equipment. Noticing that Naruto still had this overwhelming presence about him when he used his chakra, he smiled. There are only a few people in the country of Fiori that could stand up to his might. He imagined only 20 or so people when Naruto used his chakra instead of magic. Gildarts being the only one who he knew for sure could still beat Naruto in the country of Fiori. His son was a powerhouse with chakra. When he focused it and brought it out, a pillar could be seen that flew towards the heavens themselves. Though he knows several other people who have enough magic to make it visible in its natural state, he's only seen Gildarts, and his was still larger than Naruto's. Though, give it a few more years and I'm sure Naruto could give Gildarts a run for his money. Both, Naruto and Gildarts could bring even the strongest of mages to their knees with their power. While taking in Naruto's presence, he noticed his magic volume has increased again. Inwardly smirking as he knew Naruto didn't like mediating that much, he knew he must have mediated quite a bit during the last year. His reserves were now around a mid-tier class mage. Even though he didn't have the same amount of overwhelming magic energy as he did chakra, his control over it was amazing. His drive to become the best sword magic user in the nation gave him a new dream, along with his one to bring peace to the world. He would become the best sword magic user in the world, one that would make Nico proud. Closing the distance slowly, Warad walked up to his son. Smiling, he wrapped Naruto up in a hug. "Welcome home." Returning the hug, Naruto smiled as he closed his eyes. His worries about never having a family vanished on the same mountaintop 10 years ago. Hugging the same man who brought him up, he spoke again. "I'm home." After separating, still at arm's length, Naruto spoke to his father, still basking in the feeling of being home. "Let's go in, Pops. I've got a lot to tell you." Smiling as his father shook his head and turned around heading for the door. As his father walked back towards the house, he turned around to face his giant avatar. His legs a foot apart, knees bent slightly, as he clasped his hands together in front of him as his hair seemed to flow slightly as the giant wooden golem seemingly melded back into the earth, trees growing as its life energy seeped away. With the golem gone, the morning sun's rays once again blanketed the house. Turning around, he met his father's gaze as he just smiled and walked in the house with his father. Following his father into the house, he notices that the same old pictures were still on the wall, only moved slightly with newer ones closer to the entrance. Taking a moment to look over them, Warad notices this and smiles. Having been raised by a man who likes to remember the past and the occasional joke, Naruto picked up some on his old habits. Remembering the past, thinking about the future and having a good laugh with friends. Too bad he didn't pick up on my funny jokes, Warad thought as he looked at the pictures his adopted son was looking at. Naruboy, I'll go get some breakfast ready for us. Why don't you go get cleaned up and changed? We'll talk over breakfast, alright? I want to hear about everything. He finished as he turned around and headed towards the kitchen, intent on making a big breakfast for the two of them. Being one that likes a good story, Warad couldn't stop his smiling. He couldn't wait to hear what his son has been doing this past year. On the occasions that they went to the towns, Naruto would be everywhere, talking with any and everyone he could. I would too, if I grew up with no one to talk to that didn't outright hate me. Getting rid of such thoughts, he started gathering everything for breakfast. Seeing his father walk off towards the kitchen, he turned his head back to the pictures on the wall. Noticing a few with his father, Makarov and Gildarts, he sighed. Alexis still didn't come and visit. I really hope she's alright. From what Makarov Gigi told me, she's thrown herself into training and her personality has gone a complete 180. Sighing, he closed his eyes as he turned around, taking off his sandals. Tossing them on the ground next to the entrance, he undid the strap that held his giant sealing scroll, propping it up on the wall next to the door. He hung up his Haori on one of the coat racks on the back of the closed door. Stretching his back, he relaxed as he took a breath in. Nothing beats the energy and feel of the old house. As he walked through the living room and up the stairs, he headed towards his room. Expecting it to be dirty, he opened it up and a smile lit his face. His room was still clean, no dust nor dirt anywhere. The plants along his walls and windowsill were blooming as if it was their last chance. Walking into his room, he took off his shirt exposing his well-toned chest. From his abs that looked like they were chiseled from diamonds, to his pectorals that were solid as iron, adding the rare V-shape towards his crotchin, and he knew that he'd better keep his shirt on when he's near towns. Already having several bad experiences with fangirls, he didn't want any more, shuddering at the thought even. Tossing his shirt towards the wall, it slid down and into the basket he used for his dirty clothes. Doing the same with his pants and socks, he began to take off the wraps around his hands, placing them on the desk that lined his wall. In his boxers, he walked towards the closet to get some clean clothes. Deciding to wear what his father gave him when he completed the Sage Mode training, he grabbed the burnt orange kimono. The legs were a burnt orange along with the top, though the top had black covering the shoulders and along the hem that had red spiral marks covering it. Leaving the top and just grabbing the pants, he left for the shower. Hearing the shower start, Warad knew he had more time to make a better breakfast. Remembering when he first told Naruto he could cook like a 90-star chef got his eyes to sparkle. Ahaha, I still believe his sparkling eyes could light up even the tannest of nights. Though the sweat drop he got from telling him it was just a joke made him chuckle. Putting the eggs, bacon, toast and coffee tea on, he smiled. Not having to make so much food until a year ago, when Naruto was still here. Even then, he taught Naruto how to cook, his meals would rival his own. Yet another thing he just picked up like it was nothing. As he was putting the finishing touches on the breakfast plates, he took a seat at the dining room table, looking out one of the windows that lined the dining area as he waiting for his son. As the sweet aroma of fresh food filtered throughout the house, he smirked as he heard Naruto rushing down the stairs. Remembering all the times he would fumble and fall only to hurt himself as he rushed down the stairs for another day of learning, truly, memories are only second best to making them. Hearing him finally enter the dining room, he noticed Naruto's chest was bare, as he could see the scar that Sasuke inflicted on him above his heart. Naruto was wearing the burnt orange pants with his feet being wrapped in the same tape that his hands and leg pouch were, leaving his toes free. Smiling at the sight, he also noticed that Naruto had switched necklaces, wearing the one that this Tsunade gave him when he brought her back to the village. The necklace itself was special in Naruto's eyes, as even though he felt that Tsunade had given up on him, he still wore the necklace as it was the only gift that he had received, not counting the headband from Irika, as the third Hokage had told him he needed his own. Not to mention the necklace makes him feel more with nature for some reason. Finally sitting down at the table with his old man, they both exchanged small talk as they started to dig into the large meal. Talking throughout and telling his father of his journey, his expression ranged from happy to sad to angry. Warad smiled at hearing his son's first journey by himself in this land, how it reminded him of his own journeys when he was younger. As they both finished and cleaned up, Naruto and Warad walked outside and sat on the front porch. Since breakfast, Naruto's expression changed to anger then sadness and finally stopped on serious. Noticing his son's change in demeanor, he frowned. It wasn't often that Naruto got really serious, and judging by the way he was now, something happened. As they sat down on the chairs that were on the deck, his father spoke, his tone firm and serious. Something happened, son? You're usually never serious. Inwardly smirking as his father knew him the best, he sighed. Wondering on how to tell his father the news, though it should be happy, it's sad as well. Deciding to just tell him outright, he spoke as he stared out into the vast ocean that was shimmering in the morning sun. Demons were responsible for the desertification this time near the mountains. Though there were dark guilds as well. Taking a deep breath as he started his tale about the last mission his father gave to him, he could feel his father stare even as he was staring towards the ocean. Flashback 10 hours ago. As Naruto walked through the forest floor, he couldn't help but notice the small piles of sand that started appearing a few minutes ago. He was just about at the edge of the forest, then he would have another 30 or so minutes of walking before he actually reached the desert. Why am I seeing the sand so soon? As he was wondering why, he noticed the energy started to feel different. Almost as if the natural energy of the forest was being corrupted by something. It was the same feeling he remembered when his father took him to the Magic Council to look at a weaker demon that they had captured. Pure evil was pouring off of the demon, corrupting the very air around it. Though it was still breathable, it just made the natural energy around it feel sick. Widening his eyes and stopping mid-step, he felt several presences further ahead of him. Most of them gave off the same feeling as that demon. As he was about to move forward again, he felt something. Something that made his very blood boil. He felt the same type of chakra that he remembered feeling from that clan in him. But how? Pop said there shouldn't be anyone on this continent that should be able to use chakra as they don't know how to unlock it. It was never even known, and that magic was the energy here. There's no way he would be here. Quickly shaking his head and getting rid of the anger at the thought of him being here, he started to move forward again, jumping through the trees, branch to branch as the ground soared beneath him. After a few minutes he finally reached the edge of the forest, and jumped down, only to pump chakra through his legs as he dashed forwards. As he was running, he started seeing several hundred, maybe even thousands of figures standing near the entrance of the desert. The figures seemed to be fighting one another, though none seemed to really put any effort into it. As he came to a halt a ways before the group, he noticed they all stopped and stared at him as their tan faces became tinted with anger and hate. As he prepared his chakra, sending it through his feet and into the ground, he looked around the what seemed like endless group of demons. Before his eyes caught the sight of two peculiar beings, both more human-like than the rest of the demons. One was wearing a revealing cover over his shoulders that went down his arms, hiding them from view while also partially hiding his face, revealing a tan snout, thin lips and a beard circling his jawline. He was quite tall, towering over the demons spread about the desert clearing. Not having enough time to thoroughly look at the other person he saw before he was forced to focus on the demons that were currently charging at him. Yells and enraged cries filled the vicinity, as he stole one last glance at the hooded figure and his tan-skinned companion. Enraged that someone was interrupting their fun, the demons focused their anger towards the blonde that had appeared in front of them. As the horde of demons yelled and cried out, they charged Naruto with their claws, swords and anything else they likely found. The ground started shaking from the stampede that raced towards his position. Holding his ground, he quickly clasped his hands together, molding his dense chakra before he slammed them on ground, leaving small indentions from the impact. Mokutan, Mokujihiki, wood release, wood locking wall. As the demons neared Naruto, a series of wooden logs spewed forth from the desert floor, twisting and turning, surrounding him in an interlocking pattern, forming an impenetrable dome around him. Right as the demons, some jumped while others dashed, all trying to penetrate the dome that surrounded the source of their anger. As their attacks met the impenetrable defense, a dust cloud was formed as several sounds could be heard across the clearing. Sounds of swords breaking, cries of pain and anger. As the cloud cleared away, the second person that caught his attention stared at the sight. Swords, fists, arms, everything that hit the wooden dome was left battered and broken. The demons surrounding the dome were backing away as they decided to try and attack once again. This magic is similar to mine. I wonder whose is stronger. The figure thought as he, nor the demons noticed the ground start to shake. The demons, once they retreated far enough, started to run towards the dome again, intent on breaking it this time. Only the other figure that caught Naruto's eye noticed the strange and dense energy coming out from under the dome as cracks started forming on and under the dome. As the demons once again reached the dome, everyone's eyes in the vicinity widened as the earth erupted. The ground was shaking as several pillars of what looked to be large thick roots pierced the ground, soaring towards the sky before plummeting down, smashing into the ground once again. As the roots seemingly grew without resistance across the desert's surface, they entangled any and all in their path, some standing as tall as the castles in the capital of Fiori while others twisted and turned, swallowing up the desert floor. The demons that were unlucky enough to be caught were squeezed between the dense roots while others were pulled under, sinking them below the forest of thick vines and roots. The more agile ones tried to jump and stay above the sea of vines that erupted forth from the ground. Some lost their balance and joined the others below everything. As the tan-skinned figure jumped and dodged the roots that seemed to seek him out, he finally landed on some of the taller vines. Well, this is interesting. I wonder. Glancing around the what used to be desert, he noticed that the large roots that stood straight up had large pink flowers on them. Yes, very similar to my own magic. His eyes narrowing as the pink flowers slowly started to open and release a somewhat dense pollen that flowed towards the ground. Quickly realizing that the flowers were releasing poison, he jumped to the higher roots. Poisonous pollen that floats down towards the ground covered in roots. This almost seems like the start of a forest. He thought to himself as he noticed the pollen had little to no effect on the demons. Said demons that were still alive quickly tried to heal their wounds by absorbing the magic around them, only to notice the roots and vines didn't give off any magic. Though they still managed to take some in from the air around them before the pollen draped over them like a blanket, they were still more rough for wear. There's roughly about 100 or so left. Master won't like the fact that his demons were so weak, but at least we managed to get the alliance treaty to go through. As he finished glancing around the few demons that were left, he set his sights to where the dome was. I wonder, can he give me a good fight before I am summoned back? That was the last thought the figure had before he crossed his arms and closed his eyes before he opened them in shock. Why? Why can't I merge with these roots? This was magic, was it not? His eyes narrowed as he noticed the dome slowly open up, revealing the blonde mage standing there in all his glory. Though he didn't have his scroll or Haori on his back, he was carrying a sword. The sword itself caught his interest as the demons who were closer to him backed away with what looked like fear sketched on their faces. No longer sensing the strange energy he sensed from the blonde before, he sat down on the large root and focused on the blonde, intent on finding more out about him. What was that strange energy you used and who are you? Master will surely want to know about this. X several moments ago under the wooden dome. Standing back up, Naruto sighed before making a small wooden stick spew from the ground. Remembering the only fire jutsu he knew, he channeled a minuscule amount of his chakra before molding it as he formed the necessary hand seals. Bringing his right hand up to his mouth, he mentally thought the technique. Katon, Taimatsu, fire release, torch, breathing out a small flame towards the wooden stick that stuck out from the ground, lighting it on fire to provide more light under the dome. Why couldn't they just run away like the other demons that sensed my life energy? For Kami's sake, they always run from Pops. Guess I need more training, he mumbled to himself as he took off the giant sealing scroll that held all his belongings. Leaning it up on the wall of the wooden dome, he took his Haori off and placed it atop the scroll. Frowning as he finished placing the Haori over the scroll, he wondered why demons always wanted to fight and destroy first and talk afterwards. All he was going to do was ask what they were doing here. But no, they were just like the other demons that his Pops and himself ran into before. Though there were some demons that didn't want to cause chaos, though they knew it didn't want to cause chaos at the time. Pop still won't tell me why he hates demons so much. Deciding to think about that later, he focused his current predicament. Sighing as he stretched his body, he quickly brought his left hand and swiped it over his right forearm. A puff of smoke and a second later, a beautifully decorated sword and sheath. The handle was a radiant blue with a lighter shade of thin blue leather straps that crawled along the handle in a crisscross pattern. Down the sheath was an intricate gold pattern atop the radiant blue base color. Smiling as his right hand gripped the handle while his left held the sheath, he unknowingly took a second to remember when he got this sword. Mini flashback. It was near the end of the first year living with his new family member. Warad had taken him to the very first forest he had ever made. Years upon years had passed by since the creation of the giant forest, yet it still remembered Warad. As he led Naruto down one of the paths that lead towards the center of the forest where a giant lake stood to have lunch around, Warad noticed a great source of energy down one of the different paths that was created throughout the years by the animals. As they walked down the path, exchanging small talk about the future, they finally came across a small clearing, small animals grazing around it. As they walked in, the animals didn't bother moving as they felt protected by the object that rested in a giant boulder in the middle of the clearing, the sun's rays beating down upon it as vines seemed to hold it in place. Wondering how it had got there in the first place, Warad quickly decided to leave that thought for later, as he along with Naruto approached the rock. Noticing that the sword itself gave off a radiant feeling that seemed to repulse against evil, he walked up to the sword and tried to pull it from the rock. Shocked that the sword didn't come out, even with him enhancing his muscles with his magic, he noticed that the sword wasn't cursed or gave off any kind of evil vibe. He decided to let Naruto give it a try. As the young boy walked up to the sword that stuck out of the rock, he placed his hands on it. Giving it a pull, Warad watched with astonished eyes as the sword came out of the rock with ease. Standing before him was his son, holding a sword that's still a few years too big for him to carry. Excited that he actually pulled the sword out from the rock, he turned back towards his father, a large smile beaming on his face as he spoke. "Look, Pops. I did it. Can I keep it?" It was then that Warad actually realized that Naruto actually was holding one of the ancient swords of Fiori. The Master Sword, a sword that was forged for the main purpose of slaying demons specially from the Dark Mage Zeref. Closing his eyes and smiling, he spoke to his son who was jumping around holding the long sword of evil's bane. "Only if you promise to practice with it every day, on top of all the other lesson I'm going to be giving to you." Naruto could only nod his head and smile. He finally had his own sword. He could finally fulfill a promise he made to Nico when he was a few years younger. "I promise. I will become the strongest sword magic user in the world." It was this very same day that Warad realized this Nico had a bigger impact on Naruto's life than he thought, as well as the same day Naruto got a new dream and goal. Mini flashback end. Smiling as he held the sword, he quickly apologized to it as he impaled it in the ground beside him. "I normally don't use my chakra against other humans that use magic, but then again, these aren't humans and I do have to stop the desertification." Deciding to get started, he sped through hand seals as his chakra became visible, pausing for a second to gather a small amount of natural energy to mix with his own chakra. Cracks began forming everywhere around him as the ground started shaking. His long light blonde hair that had forest green tips rose up from the amount of chakra he was gathering. A second later he slammed his hands together in a praying fashion and spoke, his voice cold and sharp. Mokutan. Kajakai Korin. Would release. Advent of a world of flowering trees. As the words left his lips, the ground outside the dome erupted as thick roots from the earth spewed forth, attacking any and everything that he deemed a threat. With the natural energy he collected and intertwined with his own chakra, the technique grew faster and stronger. Hopefully getting rid of most of those demons, Naruto thought as he relaxed his stance and gripped his sword, pulling it from the ground with his right hand. Pulling his left hand up, he made a single hand seal, releasing the pollen from the flowers of his technique. Let's see how the demons deal with the poison. Smiling at his plan, he grabbed the sheath with his left hand and drew the majestic blade, which seemed to hum from being drawn again. As it was unsheathed, the silver blade started to glow as Naruto sent his magical energy through it, making it seem to sing instead of hum. Getting ready to take down his defense, he started to think about what the demons were doing here, as when he gathered a little bit of natural energy, he noticed they were corrupting the desert's energy, making it violent and almost mad. Making the desert spread faster than it usually does. Normally it would take several years for the desert to grow as fast as it is now. Pop said the deserts here in Fiori grow a few hundred feet every few years naturally. It was already time for Warad to go and perform his magic on this on, but instead he gave the job to his adopted son, Naruto. As the natural energy of the desert was being corrupted, it was forcing the desert to grow a lot faster than it was normally supposed to grow. This simple fact of disturbing nature always irked Warad and Naruto after he learned to become a sage. As he held his sword in his right hand, he placed the sheath against his right forearm and applied chakra, making it poof back into the seal. Bringing his left arm back down to his side again, he channeled his magic into it, molding and changing it into thunder and lightning, the same way Warad and Alexis taught him. After realizing that Alexis was learning Lightning Dragon Slayer magic, though she made him promise to keep the Dragon Slayer part a secret, he wanted to learn how to mold elemental magic even more than he already did. Focusing his magic and molding it, he created golden lightning that sparked into life around his hand. Bringing his sword up and holding it across his body, he brought his left hand, still coated in the golden lightning, and touched the start of the blade, running his hand down along its length. Reaching the end of the blade, he slashed his sword down to the right, as lightning seemed dance across its peerless blade. The pollen should be finished now. Taking a deep breath of the still clean air underneath the dome, he relaxed his muscles as he prepared to finish the demons. Let's go, X present time. With his blade in hand, he channeled chakra through his legs as he kicked off the ground and out of the wooden dome. As he reached the peak of his jump, he noticed the pollen didn't really do much as some of the demons were dashing right through what was left of it. Looks like I'll have to do more work. TSK, oh well, quicker I get this over with, the quicker I can get home before morning. As he came down, landing on the roots from his technique, he dashed towards the oncoming onslaught of demons that were left. Appearing directly in front of them, he swung his sword, the lightning that danced across its blade lashed out towards the front of the demons, shocking them, paralyzing most of the ones that took the full brunt of the attack. Smirking at the effect his technique had on them, he quickly jumped forward, directly in the line of demons that were paralyzed, intent on slicing them to pieces. Charging into them, he gripped his blade with both hands as he willed the lightning magic to coat his entire body, making his reactions quicker and more precise. As he reached the paralyzed demons, he held his blade to the right, swinging it in a wide arc as he seemingly passed through them with a flash of gold. Quickly turning around from the demons he just slashed, which were falling to pieces, he brought his blade up to block one of the demons that attacked him with what was left of its sword. As their blades crossed, he glanced around, noticing that most of the demons that were left were circling or charging him. Smirking, he pushed the demon's sword back with his own as he spun around and kicked the demon square in the chest, sent it flying towards several more, knocking them over. Twisting around, he slashed in a wide arc as he cut several demons that were upon him. Coating his blade with more thunder, he kicked off the ground, flying straight towards another group of demons. As he was rapidly approaching the group, he brought his blade to his side, focusing most of the thunder that coated his blade towards that tip. Reaching the group, he channeled chakra into his arm, as he sent a powerful thrust right at the closest demon, as he announced his technique. Ragingkin. Lightning blade, stabbing right through the demon. As the blade pierced said demon, the thunder at the tip of the blade exploded, sending bolts of lightning everywhere. The bolts themselves jumping and arcing towards several other demons, paralyzing them as they fell to the ground smoking before they turned to ashes. Quickly, he jumped to the right, dodging a demon who ended up punching the roots, leaving a small crater. Quickly kicking the demon, sending him flying, he twisted his body again, blocking two swords that were swung down at him. Willing the thunder to focus along his blade's edge, he applied more force as his blade easily sliced right through the two swords, sending the top part of the two blades flying past his head, as his own blade sliced right through the two demons. Watching the two fall to the ground and turn to dust, he kicked off, jumping backwards as a demon landed in front of him, where he was just standing. Quickly slashing at the demon's back, he sliced it in half, before he looked around. Man, there can't be that many left, Naruto thought as he focused pure magical energy into his sword. The thunder that once coated his blade dispersed, flowing back into his reserves. As the pure magic coated his blade, it started to hum and vibrate as he held it to his side before bringing it straight into the air. Looking towards the small group of demons that were charging him yet again, he yelled as he brought his blade down, sending a crescent of dense, pure magical energy that seemingly sliced right through the roots and several demons. As the magic that coated his blade disappeared, he quickly coated his blade with his thunder again, as the rest of the demons surrounded him in a circle. Guess they're planning on attacking me from all directions. Smirking at the thought of lesser demons actually coming up with plans, he caught a glimpse past the circle of demons. As he held his ground, the tan-skinned man that Naruto noticed earlier was searching for a piece of land that wasn't covered in the blonde's magic so he could attack the blonde. Noticing a small plot of land that was still close to the battle at hand, he quickly jumped towards it. Placing his hand down on the warm desert sand, he sent his magic into it. A few seconds later he stares at the blonde that was currently disposing the weak demons. Noticing that he caught a glimpse of him, he smirked. As a sprout seemingly started to grow, it quickly expanded, covering over the growth that the blonde had made. Surprised that his magic couldn't break through the roots, he put the thought to the side for the moment. Sending his magic through the trees again, he swung his right fist towards the blonde as he whispered, "Ramus Sika!" Spears of the branches. As the demons closed the small gap that he used to see the second person that caught his eyes earlier, he quickly parried the demon who he was blocking, before raising his sword with both hands towards the sky. Spinning it around so that the blade was facing down, he slammed it down towards the ground, impaling the thick root. The demons that circled him saw this as a chance to attack. As they started to charge the blonde, lightning cracked across the roots, racing out towards the edge of the circle they created, dancing around the feet of the demons that replaced the ones that charged. As they seemed to reach Naruto, he noticed several wooden spears flying towards his location. Believed this to be the other person's attack, his quickly finished calling out his attack as the spears seemingly pierced his body. Thunderblade's pillar. After those words left his lips, his body puffed out of existence as a pillar of lightning shot up through the thick roots, capturing everything that was surrounded inside the lightning that danced around the circle of demons' feet. As the pillar of thunder died down, a large blade of lightning seemed to appear, sticking out from the middle of the circle for a moment before dispersing. Naruto, who appeared outside the circle and standing sideways on one of the flowering roots, saw that the demons were smoking and had several holes through them. Most of the demons that were left after his attack from earlier had the same holes in them. Narrowing his eyes at the other person who attacked him, along with the demons that were in his attack's path, he kicked off the root, flying towards the rest of the demons. As he reached the last of the demons, he quickly disposed of them as he burnt them to a crisp with his lightning, and sliced them to pieces with his blade, all the while being on full alert to the other person he saw earlier. Said person was smiling at the blonde who evaded his attack so easily. "I might be able to have some fun with this one. Hopefully, Master doesn't summon me back so soon," he thought as he saw the blonde dispose of the demons. With the lightning still coating his blade, he dashed towards the last demon who was running towards him with what was left of a broken sword, angry at the demon as it had a chance to leave but still didn't. Guess Pops was right. Most demons are just here for chaos, he thought to himself as he reached the demon. Slashing downwards, he sliced the demon in its wild mid-swing. Quickly looking around the field of roots, he made sure to leave none of the demons alive as he checked for that mysterious person. After a few minutes of catching his breath, he noticed the tan-skinned man slowly walking towards him over the roots. He was a tall and highly muscular man, with thick brown hair that looked like leather straps, brown eyes with long sideburns joining his hair to his prominent goatee which took the form of several triangles. Apart from the upside-down crescents hanging from his ears, he also has a straight dark streak running over his left eye, which extends from the top of his forehead down to his mid-cheek. As the tall man stopped a ways in front of Naruto, who was holding his blade to the side, ready to block or attack in a moment's notice, he spoke, his voice deep and full of excitement. "Can you still fight, young mage? Tell me, what is your name?" Raising his eye at the taller man in front of him, Naruto debated telling him the truth, as something about the man before him made his danger senses go wild. Deception would be the best way to go. "I can't have my name out there just yet. Don't want guilds coming after me 24/7 trying to recruit me," he smirked as he decided the name he would give. Standing straight up, letting his blade rest down beside his right leg, his muscles tense as he needed to be ready for anything before this man. "My name is Shikamaru, Wandering Mage." Finishing his name, he put a smile on his face as he spoke again. "Will you let me know your name?" In all truth, Naruto really was interested in his name. He was able to move around the battlefield without being sensed, though. The reasoning behind that could have been the demons corrupting the air around him. The tall man before him smiled as he crossed his arms. "My name is Azuma, Mage of Grimoire Heart, one of the 7 kin of Purgatory." As he finished introducing himself, he half expected the blonde mage in front of him to flee with fear over his face. Most people who heard Grimoire Heart ran before they could even finish the sentence, his smile increasing even more as the blonde didn't move so much as a muscle, aside from raising an eyebrow. 7 kin of what now? Scratching his head with his left arm, he sighed, not noticing the sweat drop forming on Azuma's head. Looking at Azuma, he knew if they fought, he might have to resort to using his chakra. The man before him radiated magic power, not even near the same level as Gildart's, but high enough that he would need to keep on his toes if he were to use his magic. With only having half his magic reserves left, which were only around an A-class mage, the man in front of him seemed very dangerous. Not to mention his reserves seemed mid-S class. I'll need to be tricky, he thought. So anyway, what were you doing here with the demons? He decided to get right to the point, as he lifted the blade up, his golden lightning magic dancing across its silver blade once again. Smirking at the blonde's forwardness, Azuma decided to speak. Telling a dead man would harm nothing, right? I was handling a peace treaty between the 3 major dark guilds. This was the last one that you interrupted. Narrowing his eyes at Shikamaru ahead of him, he spoke again. Now, though my business here is already finished, I sense that you are strong. Sighing, as Naruto knew where this was going, he prepared himself. Condensing the lightning on his blade, he grabbed it with both his hands, as he listened to Azuma finish his sentence. I seek a good fight with you. I haven't had one in quite a while. As he finished speaking, he kicked off the ground towards Naruto, who quickly covered his body with a thin layer of his thunder magic, as most of it was condensed on his blade. Reaching Naruto, he threw a punch directly at his face. Seeing the punch coming, he brought his blade up and blocked it with the flat side, not expecting an explosion to occur as soon as his fist connected with his blade. Being thrown back and slamming into one of his large roots, Naruto quickly got up, coughing up a little blood as he did so. Looking at his opponent, he noticed a frown on his face. As he rose his arms up, looking past him, Naruto noticed several trees that weren't his growing atop his own roots, quickly making their way towards him. As they reached where Azuma was, they stopped. Folim Sika! Swords of the Leaves! Raising both his hands, Azuma used his magic and summoned a massive funnel of leaf blades that flew towards him. Naruto's eyes widened as he noticed the leaves were razor-sharp. Quickly bringing his blade up, he tried to block as many as he could as he channeled his chakra for a quick Sealess Kawarimi body replacement. As he was blocking the leaves, they were slowly starting to get through his defense, as he finally changed places with a log, ending up behind Azuma, who quickly turned around. Dashing forth as Azuma was turning around, Naruto quickly slashed down, his thunder magic still coating his blade. As he slashed down, Azuma quickly brought his arms up to defend, which helped some, but was still cut across both his arms. Feeling tingly from the thunder that coated the blade, he quickly shook his arms, blood flying off and onto the roots underneath their feet. Smirking at the sight of the blonde finally getting serious, he kicked off the roots directly towards Naruto, who had jumped away after he had slashed Azuma. Surprising the blonde with his speed, he held his hand out directly towards Naruto, announcing his technique, making Naruto's eyes widen. Bleave! An explosion occurred directly in front of Azuma's hand, which was right in Naruto's face, blowing him back and slamming him into another large root. As Naruto slid down the root, blood going down his right arm, he opened his eyes. What the hell was that? He just pointed at me and something exploded. As Naruto pushed himself off the ground, he leaned back against the tree as he watched Azuma walk towards him, the frown back on his face as he spoke. What is this, Shikamaru? Where is that energy I sensed earlier? Show it to me. I wish to fight you at your fullest. Azuma all but shouted at Naruto, who finally stood up straight. Naruto, deciding to try a few more things before he resorted to using his chakra, smirked. You'll have to beat it out of me, he said as he slammed his blade in the roots, letting his thunder magic flow through the blade and crawled directly along the roots towards Azuma. Seeing this, Azuma just jumped in the air, avoiding the lightning. As he took his eyes off Naruto, Naruto rushed towards where his magic had traveled, placing the tip of his blade down to where his thunder magic flowed. It crawled back up his blade. Willing it to condense around his blade again, he jumped straight towards Azuma, who was shocked at the speed he just witnessed from the blonde, before his maniacal grin appeared again. As Naruto was flying towards Azuma, he readied a punch while Azuma was reading his magic, intent on meeting this Shikamaru head-on. As Naruto slashed down, his blade was met with Azuma's fist that was surrounded by an explosion which stopped his blade and propelled Naruto back down to earth, while he himself was pushed farther up. As he was falling down, he noticed Shikamaru made a hand seal with his left hand. Seconds later, two beings seemed to grow up from the ground, reaching the exact height as Shikamaru. As he landed on the ground, he noticed they looked exactly like the blonde. This is it. Show me more. Azuma shouted, excited that his opponent was finally using that energy he sensed earlier. As Naruto finished making the two Mokuton Bunshins, him stabbed his blade into the roots. As he willed his thunder magic to dance around his body once more, he dashed forwards with his two clones. Seeing this, Azuma smiled and met with his own charge. So you want to fight with fists? Fine, show me what you can do. He yelled as Naruto's fist met Azuma's. Right at the impact, another explosion occurred, pushing Naruto back, while his clone snuck up from behind Azuma. One launched an chakra-enhanced kick directly at Azuma's midsection, which launched him straight through several roots that were sticking up, causing them to fall. As Naruto was flying back, second clone quickly rushed forth, intent on catching Naruto, saving him from any damage. As Azuma skipped across the large roots that blanketed the ground, he finally stopped skidding, quickly getting up. Noticing he was covered in bristles, he smirked, not having felt so much fun since his bouts with Zankro. Laughing loudly, he grinned before he kicked off again, straight towards where he was just kicked from, intent on enjoying more of this battle. As Naruto was set down from being caught, he sighed. I will have to resort to using my chakra. TSK, I was hoping I could do more damage than I have without it. He sighed as he made the same hand seal from earlier. Mokuton, Taja Mokuton Bunshin, would release, multiple would release clones. As several clones of himself crept up from the roots he was standing on, he sighed. Go, keep him busy as I prepare, he announced to his little army of clones, to which they just smirked and dashed off, plans to have fun with the Grimoire Hearts wizard. Bringing his left arm up and swiping it across the seal on his right arm, he caught the sheath that belonged to his sword. Putting it away and back into his seal, he looked down at his clothes and sighed. Man, now I need to get new clothes, this guy's explosions are ruining them. His shirt, if one could even call it that anymore, was in tatters, his pants were basically shorts now. As he looked over himself again, forgetting about the clothes, he stretched and let his chakra flood his body. Within seconds, most of his wounds closed up and healed. Holding his hands in front of him, he clenched them a few times, getting used to fully using his chakra since it's been a few months since he's needed to use it fully. Hearing explosions in the distance, Naruto figured Azuma must be finishing up with his clones, not wanting this to last any longer than it already has. Naruto tore his shirt off, leaving his golden necklace with 5 gold bars on, as he kicked off the roots, intent on finish this quickly. Reaching where his clones were fighting Azuma, he noticed the ground was littered with wooden spikes and leaves. So, he can control the earth somewhat, Naruto thought before he looked directly at Azuma, whose right arm was bleeding profusely. Alright, let's get serious, Azuma-san. Naruto yelled as he kicked off the ground towards Azuma, who raised his hand towards Naruto, sending several hundred small leaves flying directly towards him, intent in cutting him into little pieces. As Naruto was rushing Azuma, he brought his hands together into a familiar cross shape as he molded his chakra. Mokuton Bunshin no Jutsu, would release. Would clone technique. Appearing beside Naruto was another, perfect copy of himself, which ran off to the side to circle around Azuma, which he raised his other hand, allowing some of the leaves to flow towards the clone as well. More clone Shikamaru! Come! Fight me! Azuma yelled as he released the blast from his hand towards the clone that circle around. Turning his head, he met Naruto's leg with his own before he felt a hand press against his back. Mokuton Jibaku Iso! Would release. Tree Binding's Eternal Burial. His eyes widened as the leg he blocked with his own disappeared in a puff of smoke, as roots seemed to erupt from the earth, wrapping themselves around his body, pulling him into the air. As he struggled against the bindings, he lost his view of his opponent. Deciding to quickly try and get out of the bindings, he focused his magic as he was still ascending towards the sky, before he felt something hard meet his back, sending him flying towards the earth. As Naruto's technique binded Azuma and carried him towards the sky, he quickly jumped on some of the roots that grew with it, hopping from root to root as he ascended with Azuma before quickly rushing past him and landing on one of the roots that stood above the struggling Azuma. Kicking off said root, he flew down towards Azuma. His leg met Azuma's back as he was sent flying towards the ground. Reaching the ground, Azuma flew through the thick roots, sending them into the air from the result of the impact. Enough of this, Azuma thought as he extended his arms to his sides. Tower burst. Releasing his magic energy, he created a massive tower of explosive flames that tunneled its way up through the thick vines. As Naruto landed back on the ground, he watched as Azuma, who was smoking, jumped out of the hole he created, staring at Naruto with his maniacal grin as he spoke. So, Azuma-san, are you ready to finish this? I have things I need to do, and as much as I like fighting under the full moon like this, I would like to make it home before morning breaks, he stated as he entered his taijutsu stance, which made Azuma's maniacal grin grow even wider. Of course. As much as I would like to continue this fight until one of us falls, I will probably be summoned back to the guild shortly. Let's finish it, Shikamaru-san, he stated as he entered his combat stance. A few seconds had passed as the two stared at each other, before they both kicked off the ground. Naruto, using his chakra, could see several small sparkles around Azuma's fist as it was coming towards his own. So, that's what's making the explosions, he thought as he dodged the punch, yet was still pushed back by the explosion that followed, though he quickly performed a kawarimi, body replacement, replacing himself with one of the logs near Azuma. Let's just make sure about it with this. Clasping his hands together as his hair flew towards the sky from the amount of chakra he was using. Underneath him, the wood bloated up as it formed what looked to be a dragon's head. As the head seemingly grew out from the ground, Naruto announced his technique. Mokuton Mokuria no Jutsu. Wood release. Wood dragon technique. The wooden dragon towered over the two combatants as it roared towards the sky. Azuma, seeing this, smirked as he launched himself up towards his opponent, who was standing on the top of the wooden dragon. Naruto glanced towards Azuma's hand, which, once again, had sparkles around it. Tapping into his natural energy that he had stored in one of the seals on his body, he felt magical energy from down below, near Azuma's trees. Narrowing his eyes as the energy from the small fruits were the same as the sparkles around his hand, he watched as Azuma punched his wooden dragon's cheek. The explosion greatly bigger this time, as the dragon soared towards the ground. Quickly jumping off the dragon as soon as it was hit, Naruto flew towards Azuma, who was smirking at him, quickly pumping chakra through his legs. He disappeared in a burst of speed, greatly surprising Azuma as he appeared behind the tall man, with condensed chakra covering both his forearms. Naruto sent his fist straight into Azuma's back, holding back greatly so he didn't outright kill the man. He spoke his technique, Sakatsu, Twin Bone, sending Azuma spiraling through the air directly above the ground, skidding and skipping the roots as slammed against one of his own trees. Looking up at Naruto, whose arms were still out, he melded into the tree for a moment before he appeared again. Most of his wounds healed up, though the severe ones were still there. For once, Azuma was happy that his opponent could actually fight for more than 20 minutes, as his master always stopped their spars after 10 minutes. Letting his gaze meet Shikamaru's, he noticed he was walked towards him. I see, I get your magic now. At least a tidbit of it. Let's finish this. Azuma, Naruto shouted as he landed on the roots, clasping his hands together. The roots underneath him and around him started to crack as his chakra flared. As Azuma started to get up from their little bout, he smirked as he created several large fists made from his trees that covered a good bit of Naruto's own roots. As his fists grew in size, they floated above him as he threw his fist towards Naruto, his tree fists following the motion as they flew towards Naruto. Mokutan. Hote no Jutsu. Wood release. Cloth sack technique. Naruto announced as several giant wooden hands erupted from around him, catching and blocking the tree fists that Azuma sent towards him, shocking Azuma greatly. As the giant hands caught the tree fists, Naruto separated his hands as he clenched his fists, the giant wooden hands mimicking him, crushing the tree fists. As Azuma watched this, he again tried to merge with the roots that Naruto had created before their fight, only to find that he couldn't. As he noticed the familiar magical pull of his guild summon, he frowned as he jumped away from one of the giant wooden hands that smashed down where he was at. Looking back towards Naruto, he noticed his blonde hair was flowing behind him as his body was covered in a forest green shade of energy. His eyes widened as he noticed how much his opponent had built up. Mokutan. Makijin no Jutsu. Wood release. Wood human technique. Azuma watched as the ground around his opponent shook violently, as what seemed like a giant golem was coming out of the roots beneath his feet. Seconds turned to moments, as the immense beast came to life right in front of him. Towering over him, Azuma couldn't help but feel weak in comparison to his opponent. Seeing Shikamaru standing atop its giant nose, along with the wooden dragon that was wrapped around its body, he couldn't help but feel his opponent had the superior magic. Smirking, as his body started to disappear thanks to the summon as the giant's fist came down, roaring through the air, smashing into the ground where he was standing, leaving an enormous crater while creating a giant dust cloud from the sand that was brought up. Sighing, as he sensed that Azuma has fled right as his golem had finished coming to life. Man, will I ever get to fight with this technique? Last time I met with Gildarts, we got too drunk to fight. He cursed himself as he looked over the battlefield. Sighing, he willed the golem to go towards the forest after he picked up his giant sealing scroll and Haori. As they reached the forest, he confirmed that the demons were definitely corrupting the natural energy of the desert, as the evil feeling that had spread towards the forest had already started receding. As he jumped off his golem, he walked a little ways before it, facing the desert. Well, let's finish the job. I'm sure Pops knows I'm already on the way home. He let himself smile for a moment before he flared his chakra, sending a pillar of forest green energy towards the sky. Standing shoulder-length apart, he slammed his hands together as he gathered the natural energy of the forest behind him. After several seconds of complete silence and stillness, markings appeared around Naruto's eyes as a circle appeared on his forehead with another inside of it. Opening his eyes, he spoke as the pillar of chakra disappeared. Senpu. Mokutan Hijitsu. Jukai Koten. Sage Art. Would release secret technique. Nativity of a world of trees. As he was speaking the words, the ground was already cracking and shaking. Large roots could be seen erupting from the ground, pushing the earth away. Once he finished speaking, the roots shot forth, headed towards the desert. The immense amount and size of the roots shook the very ground, trees erupting everywhere as the roots dug through the dense sand of the desert, only stopping about a mile into the desert. After a few minutes the shaking stopped as Naruto now glanced over his work. Catching his breath slightly, he wiped the sweat off his brow. Man, how could Pops do several of these in the same week? I'll have no idea. Though he used his Sage mode, he could have done this without it. But when using his Sage mode, he exerted some of the natural energy of the forest behind him, and placed it all around the new forest he created, giving it a head start at survival. Smirking at his work, he turned around and walked towards his golem, which had its hand on the ground for Naruto to step on. Bringing him up to the top of its head, Naruto grabbed his giant sealing scroll and opened it. Channeling some of his chakra, he slammed his hand down on the scroll, making a puff of smoke appear. As it cleared, a new jumpsuit, the same one he was wearing before, appeared. Smiling, he changed into it, as his golem started walking towards their home. It's been a long year, but finally, all the missions his father gave him to complete are done. Finally, he was heading home. As he left on the giant golem, he missed the tall silhouette that stood atop the mountains overlooking the entire area he was at. As the moon's light shone down on the tall figure, its shoulder-length orange hair was shaking in the night wind. A small smile could be seen on the figure's face as he turned around and walked off. Guess he didn't need my help after all. Keep growing strong, Naruto. I look forward to everything you bring to this continent. Don't worry about your past, as everything will come with time. With those thoughts, the figure turned around and started walking off into the distance, its smile wide on his face. We'll be there for you, as that's what family's for. Flashback over. As the sun shone down onto their house, Warad sat there beside his son. A contemplative look on his face as he went over everything that Naruto had told him. Demons were at the desert, their very presence making the desert's energy angry, making it spread faster. Then, with the knowledge of the Dark Guild making an alliance with another also brings worry. Something that sent shivers down his side. I'll need to tell the council about this, as well as informing the rest of the wizard saints and guild leaders in the area. Looking to his side, he stared at his son, who told him everything with a calm face, not sounding the least bit worried. Smirking to himself, he chuckled as he turned his head towards the ocean, catching the attention of his son. What's so funny, Pops? He told him all the details about the desert meeting and fight. The demons and dark guilds, and here his father is, laughing. Just like him, if he's not telling jokes he's laughing. Smiling, he too looked out onto the vast sea. Nothing there, boy. Just reminiscing about the past. Truly, Naruto reminded him of himself, never one to worry, never one to freak out when people most expect them to, just going with the flow. Truly, Naruto and Hashirama, he saw himself in both the boys. So, now that you're back, what are your plans? Are you going to stay here, or will you go on your own adventure and join a guild? Guilds? Most of the guilds never sounded like fun to him, though Fairy Tail stood out the most. Family. Fairy Tail spoke about family as if they were one giant family. If there was a guild he would join, it would have to be Fairy Tail. Remembering everything his pops said about the guild, all their fights, memories, and fun times they had, I already know what I want to do. Smiling, Naruto spoke as he got up and stretched. Yeah, I'm going to head on an adventure and join Fairy Tail. Remembering all the stories you used to tell me, not to mention that you used to belong to them. Makarabjiji always said they are just one big family. It sounds like my kind of place. As he was talking, Warad stared at his son with a smile. As Naruto finished his stretches, he spoke again. Yeah, I planned on staying a few days, but even though I'm home, I really want to get out there again. Going on adventures and missions by himself let him go out and experience different things. Meeting different people, making new friends, sleeping under the moon and being with nature. Even though Warad took him out in his earlier years, it wasn't like when he left this past year by himself. Going out, earning money, and seeing the different sights. All things that Naruto wanted to continue doing, even though he had just got back home from a year of being away. He knew his father would understand. If that's what you want to do, then go for it. I remember the first time I left my home to see the different places in the continent. Smiling as he got up and threw an arm over his son's shoulder, he spoke again. Go, have your own life. I'll always be here for you. Taking back his arm, he turned around, heading back into the house. Let's go pack your things. Fairy Tail is in Magnolia. It's a few days away for normal mages, he said with a smirk as he looked over his shoulder towards his son, who got the biggest grin on his face. Walking back in the house and heading upstairs to his room, he found his large ceiling scroll. Opening it up, he channeled chakra into it, getting several poofs of smoke. As they cleared away, several pots and pans as well as the rest of the things Naruto brought with him were sitting on the scroll. Bathroom utensils, sleeping bags, clothes, everything one would need was there. Smiling, he left all the pots and pans on the floor as he went to his closet and grabbed the rest of his clothes. As he grabbed the top to his sage clothes, he put it on along with the wrap around his torso. While putting the wrap around his hands as well, he finished packing his clothes. Laying everything of importance on the giant scroll, he smiled as he channeled chakra into the scroll. A second later, along with a puff of smoke, all that was left was the giant sealing scroll. Putting on the red haori his father got for him to go along with the kimono, he put the giant scroll behind his back as he closed the door to his room. Walking down the stairs, he saw his father standing at the door, holding a small package as he was watering the plants. Walking over to him, he took a moment to look at all the pictures before he spoke to his father. I'm ready, Pops, he said as he stood before his father. Turning his head, Warad saw Naruto was wearing the sage kimono he got for him, which brought a smile to his face. Over the years, he watched as Naruto grew into a fine young man. Now, age 22, standing 6 foot. I wonder if Kurama-san would be proud of what he's become. Yes. Closing the distance and giving Naruto a hug, he smiled as he patted his back. Alright, have fun, son. I'll keep in touch with you through the vines, he said as he released his son, who just smiled at him as he walked out the door and off the porch. Turning around, Naruto took one last look at the house he grew up in after leaving his old life. All the memories of growing up, all his times of his techniques backfiring, all the good and bad times. He smiled as a few tears rolled down his face. Waving goodbye and turning around, he left. Walking towards his future, to his new home, Fairy Tail. I wonder if Makarabjiji is expecting me so soon, he thought as he finally reached the forest, which he took to the trees, jumping from branch to branch. I will find out what's happened to Alexis-chan. There's no way she's changed as much as Gigi said she has. Kicking off a branch harder than before, he flew through the trees, a smile on his face. Excited to meet his old friend, and Gigi. Excited to see Gildarts again and possible have a match with him. With the wind blowing his long hair behind him, he went forwards with a large smile on his face. Here I come. Fairy Tale. Here is Chapter 2, Green Red vs. Cliffrunner Behemoth. All the memories of growing up, all his times of his techniques backfiring, all the good and bad times. He smiled as a few tears rolled down his face. Waving goodbye and turning around, he left. Walking towards his future, to his new home, Fairy Tale. I wonder if Makarov Gigi is expecting me so soon, he thought as he finally reached the forest, which he took to the trees, jumping from branch to branch. I will find out what's happened to Alexis-chan. There's no way she's changed as much as Gigi said she has. Kicking off a branch harder than before, he flew through the trees, a smile on his face. Excited to meet his old friend, and Gigi. Excited to see Gildarts again and possible have a match with him. With the wind blowing his long hair behind him, he went forwards with a large smile on his face. Here I come. Fairy Tale. As the afternoon sun continued to beat down on the lands below it, a single figure could be seen shooting through the trees. The figure was Naruto Sequin, adopted son, a sage, as well as the apprentice of Warad Sequin. As he was jumping from branch to branch, he was silently humming to himself as he got lost in his thoughts. Man, how much farther is Magnolia? This is insane. Why can't there be like a teleportation thing or something? He idly thought as he jumped down from the branches. Walking along the path, he groaned about how long it's taking to reach Magnolia before he reached into his burnt orange kimono to one of the 2 storage seals placed inside. Channeling some chakra, he pulled out one of the maps his father gave him as he left on his journey to Fairy Tale. Looking over the map as he continued to walk forward. Another few miles and there's Kaiser Town, haven't been there in a while. His stomach rumbling as he looked over the map, guessing several destinations. I could stop there for some food and restock everything. I never did pack any food for the trip. Nodding to himself, he put away the map as he continued walking down the path, enjoying the nature around him. Musing to himself, he pulled his legendary blade out from the seal on his right arm, deciding to carry it as he walked. I wonder if Alexis would be proud of how much I've improved my control over my thunder lightning magic. As his thoughts returned towards his fellow older blonde, he frowned. Hopefully, she is still the friendly and cheerful girl he became friends with. Though he did hear the whole explanation on how Makarov had to banish her father from the guild, which had a huge impact on her, as well as her inferiority complex and wanting to be known as herself, not just as Makarov's granddaughter, he just wouldn't believe it until he saw it for himself. If it comes down to it, I'll beat it back into you, Lexine. I won't allow you to fall down the wrong path. Leaving his thoughts of his friend and the old geezer of Fairy Tale, they went straight towards Gildarts, the ace of Fairy Tale, as well as one of the strongest mages his father has ever told him about. Man, I really want to go all out against him. If what Pop says is true, it will truly be an enjoyable battle. Thinking to himself as he continued walking down the path while humming random tunes. After a few more minutes of walking through the quiet forest, he knew he was being followed by several people as well as another figure, who he would have definitely missed if not for him sending his chakra through the ground. Hearing several thumps behind him, he stopped walking. The grip on his scabbard tightened as he heard a voice. Drop all your valuables and leave, and we might let you live. Definitely bandits, he thought as he slowly turned around, still feeling the hidden person somewhere in the trees watching him. Looking around, he counted around 10 bandits, all dressed in dark rags, while having masks cover their faces. Ignoring the yelling telling him to freeze, he smirked. Seeing this, the leader of the group who stood at the front, stepped forth and spoke again. You not hear me, punk? Drop all your things and leave. Or we'll do worse to ya than we did to that town. Eyes narrowing as he heard the bandits' leader, he spoke, his tones slightly scaring the bandits. What did you do to Kaiser Town? It was the town he was heading to. Hopefully, the bandits were just trying to scare him. His past visits to the town were all fun. The townsfolk were nice and welcoming, especially with his pops. If the bandits did anything to the town and its people, they would pay. His thoughts completely forgot the still hidden person that was watching everything. Smirking, the bandits behind their leader started laughing as he spoke. The town? We ransacked it a few hours ago, should still be burning. Ah ha ha. As soon as he joined the rest of his merry band of bandits in their laughter, the entire group suddenly stopped laughing and stared straight at Naruto, who had his sage mode markings on his face, it activating with his anger. The killing intent he was unleashing towards them made them sweat, while having several visions of their deaths appear before them. The small black figure that was in the trees narrowed its eyes as it sensed chakra being used as it watched the blonde kick off the ground, disappearing from where he stood, only to appear standing directly in front of the leader. His right fist buried deep into the leader's stomach, his left gripping onto his sword while his Haori was falling down back into place from the intense speed he displayed. Naruto, leaning forward, spoke into the leader's ears, though not loud enough for the figure in the trees to hear. If anyone is hurt, I will find you and make you wish you had a better life. He finished as he channeled chakra through his arm and followed through, flinging the leader far through the forest, breaking through trees as he flew. Bringing his arm down, he glared at the rest of the bandits, before kicking off the ground, disappearing again as he seemingly appeared behind the group. Each of the bandits suddenly fell forward as their eyes rolled to the back of their heads. Turning around, he reached behind him, holding his hand above the giant scroll before summoning his chakra and grabbing the rope that appeared from the scroll in a puff of smoke. After a few minutes he brushed his hands together as he stared down at the bandits who were now tied together with the rope. Looking behind him and up at the trees, he spoke again. "You can come out now, I've known you were there for a while, whatever you are." The small black figure in the tree's eyes widened in shock before its face looked as if it smirked as it jumped down from the branches. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw a small black cat jump down from the trees, his brow rising as he made sure the cat was what he felt, which it was as he couldn't sense anything else in the forest near him. "So you were the one who has been watching me for a while, kitty?" He spoke as he walked towards the cat, his sage mode leaving him, the natural energy dissipating back into nature. The black cat, not sensing any ill intent from him, just sat there as Naruto lifted it up. Why did I feel chakra coming from this cat? Naruto thought to himself as he started scratching the cat behind its ear, getting a purr in return. "So, do you want to accompany me to Kaiser Town? I'll be heading there to stock up on some supplies as well as checking up on them, making sure these bandits didn't harm anyone," he asked the cat, who just licked his hand in return as it climbed up onto his shoulder before jumping atop his head and laying down in his locks of hair. "I'll take that as a yes." He smiled. It was nice to have a companion, even though something was up with this cat. Turning around and walking towards the bandits who were still asleep, he reached down and grabbed a part of the rope that was stretched out. Gripping it, he started walking towards the town, the bandits being dragged behind him. "Well, let's go." As they started walking towards the edge of the forest, the cat atop his head laid there, fully aware that the blonde felt the chakra that was coming off of it, though didn't know when he would actually question it. "Wonder how he'll react to seeing my true form?" Inwardly smirking as it just relaxed on the blonde's head, its front paws dangling off the front of Naruto's head. After around 30 more minutes of walking, Naruto finally exited the forest, taking a pause as he took in the beautiful scenery before him. The beautiful grassy plain that stretched towards the bottom of the mountains where Kaiser Town was located. The sight even enticed a meow out of the black cat that was lazing around on his head. "I've missed this view, but I need to see if the town is alright," he said aloud as he started walking again, the bandits still unconscious as they were dragged behind him. As he looked over at the town in the distance, there wasn't any smoke arising from the town, and he couldn't sense anyone's life force fading when he entered his sage mode. With there being nothing to worry about, he walked on normally as he enjoyed the view. Finally reaching the entrance of the town, he was greeted with the sight of a busy, yet calm little town. The streets bustling with people who were shopping, though there were some who were repairing one of the houses near the edge of the small town. As he walked into the town, he was greeted by several people, all of whom he already met on previous visits with his father. Giving a wave at everyone as he walked through the town, though he did receive several looks as the people saw the bandits, he noticed the town seemed to be scared of something. As he was heading towards the middle of town where the Magic Council's small station was, some of the men who were repairing the houses that were damaged by the bandits came up and spoke to him. Sighing to himself as he paused right before the entrance, he smiled as the men approached him. "Hey Naruto-kun. How you doing, man?" A burly man that stood at a height of 6 feet 3 inches, with just his shoes and some jeans. His skin had a dark tan from working in the sun, his shirt was slung over his shoulder. He had short and messy black hair with a matching goatee. Recognizing who the man was, he replied as the small cat jumped off his head and landed on a side of his giant scroll. "What's up, Nate? You guys need any help?" In all seriousness, he could just build new houses with his Mokotan, making it all that much faster to get the town life back to normal. "No, we're gonna be finished in the next few days, and it's good business for us." He gave a small laugh as he looked at the bandits that were tied up and being dragged. Smirking, he looked back at Naruto as the rest of his laborers went to one of the restaurants for their drink and some food. "I take it you caught them as they were escaping." Crossing his arms across his chest, his voice relaxed. "When they attacked, no one was hurt, they just broke into a few of the houses. One even destroyed the few houses we're fixing up. Can't believe some mages would stump so low as to use the gift for stupid purposes." Finishing his rant as he scratched his head. Laughing while he mentally agreed, Naruto just smiled as he spoke to the disgruntled man who looked like he needed to get out of the sun that was beating down on the small town. "Well, I'm just glad no one here's hurt. I've came to this town several times in the past. When I heard these bandits say they had ransacked this town, I feared that people were actually hurt." Giving a jerk on the rope, he looked towards the building directly in front of him. "I'm gonna drop them off here, the council knights stop by every so often, right? Figure I just let them deal with it." He finished as he looked back towards Nate. Laughing at the blonde in front of him, he smiled. "Yeah, just drop them off, I'm sure the trip from your house left you tired. I'll fill the paperwork out detailing their crimes." He finished as he reached for the rope which Naruto promptly handed him. "Alright, thanks again Naruto-kun," he said as he waved to Naruto, who began his trek to find a place to eat. Turning around himself, he paused as he remembered something serious. Yelling out to Naruto, who was petting the black cat that was resting on the giant scroll, he spoke. Naruto, head to the mayor's office. Something has come up and we need some help." Naruto, having heard him, brought his hand up and gave him a thumbs up, letting him know he heard. Sighing, as he turned back around and towards his new destination, he began walking again. Am I ever going to get some food in me? He asked in a defeated tone as his forest green-tipped, blonde hair swayed across his back in the slight breeze. Laying back on his head was the black cat, who seemingly smirked at its new companion. Walking through the town, he began to notice the people's expressions. They held fear and anxiety, as if something or someone was going to attack soon. The bandits have already left? What could they be afraid of? He thought as he became serious. The small town that was filled with happy and cheerful people has become almost like a totally different town. What the hell is going on? This entire past year, monsters, demons, dark guilds. Everything is going crazy. Finally reaching the mayor's office, he smirked. When he entered the town, he could sense a strong presence but couldn't pinpoint it as it was moving. Though standing directly in front of the mayor's building, he could tell it was inside. Smiling as whoever it was had higher reserves than he did, in magic at least. Walking up the steps to the building, he opened the door, getting strange looks as everyone noticed the black cat lazing on his head, though its golden eyes stared right back at them. Smiling, he walked directly up to the receptionist's desk and spoke to the beautiful blue-haired woman. Hey Cheryl-san, is Hector GG available? I was told I needed to come see him. He asked as the woman smiled back at him and nodded her head as she spoke. Yes, Naruto-chan. Though he has a visitor, I'm sure he wouldn't mind you intruding. In fact, I believe he was about to send for you if you hadn't showed up when you did, she said as she walked around the desk and hugged the boy who had visited the town so many times in the past with Warad. Letting go of the hug, she held him at arm's length, getting a closer look at him as she spoke again. Oh my, Naruto-chan. You sure grew handsome in these past years. I'm sure your father must be proud. I can't wait to see how far you've come in your training. Warad-sama always told me you were strong. Blushing at the praise, he just scratched the back of his head as he looked away, remembering his father tell him that possible only the wizard saints and the high S-class mages could stand against him when he goes all out. Thanks Cheryl-san. I should head to see Hector GG. He said as he squirmed his way away from the beautiful woman who had a Cheshire grin on from the teasing. It was good to see you again, bye, he said as he quickly entered the mayor's office. Cheryl just shook her head as she remembered a younger Naruto who didn't know how to act when she praised him. Seems like he still hasn't fully healed Warad-sama, she thought as she narrowed her eyes at the black cat on his head. Being near mages most her life, she could tell when something or someone was different, and she had that same feeling from the cat. You always did attract strange things, Naruto-chan. I just hope this one if friendly. As he quickly closed the door as he entered the office, he sighed as he wiped a few beads of sweat off his forehead. Cheryl-san hasn't changed, he said aloud, not realizing he interrupted the meeting the mayor was having. Looking up, he scratched his cheek as he just let out a chuckle, his eyes meeting the mayor's as well as a beautiful redhead with a silver breastplate with the Heart Cruise symbol on the front in gold. She was wearing a blue skirt along with black boots with gauntlets that matched her breastplate. Her red hair trailed down her back while she had two bangs that framed her face. One could tell that this woman has an amazing figure under the armor. Giving her a once-over, he knew she was the one he sensed when he arrived in the town, and while he was looking at her, he noticed her left arm had the fairy tale symbol, crimson red hair, Heart Cruise armor. This must be Erza Scarlet Makarov Gigi told me about. As he walked forward, stopping beside the red-haired beauty who was giving him the same once-over, though in her case it was to make sure he wasn't a threat to the mayor, he spoke. Hector GG. I heard you were going to send for me? Reaching out, he shook hands with the mayor who was smiling at the young man. Ah yes, Naruto-kun. We have a slight problem that I was hoping you could help us with, he said, getting up and walking to the window that allowed the giant mountainside to be seen. Pouring himself and his two guests a cup of tea that was sitting under the windowsill, he walked in front of his desk and took a seat on the couch. Follow suit, Erza and Naruto both sat opposite of him. As the two took their seats, Hector began speaking again. As I was telling Erza-san here, we have a problem. A wild cliff runner has came down from the mountains. He took a sip of his tea as he paused for a moment to let the information sink in. Looking across the table at Erza and Naruto sitting beside each other, calmly waiting for more, he began again. Now, while normally the cliff runners are calm and peaceful creatures, the one that has came down and made its home somewhere in the forest, probably in one of the caves, this one seems crazy. Almost as if it's been tainted. When the word tainted came into play, Naruto's demeanor changed. Having spent the past year seeing most of Fiori while doing missions, he came across many different creatures that have been tainted, creatures as well as landscapes. Be it dark magic or demons, it always meant bad news. It's like the beast has become crazy, not to mention its size. It's grown gigantic compared to the rest of its species. He paused a moment as he looked down at his teacup, taking in the aroma of the hot tea. Looking up and meeting the eyes of Naruto, he finished. Though it has been down the mountain for the past month, it has left us alone. Over the past week, it's becoming more and more daring. A few days ago it attacked and killed several of our farmers, while taking all the livestock. At this, Erza's eyes grew wide while her fists clenched. Seeing this, Naruto released some of his chakra, at which relaxed Erza ever so slightly while making the small cat purr intently as it crawled down and laid on his lap. Erza finally spoke as she drank the rest of the tea she was given. I accept. You will have the beast gone by nightfall. As she got up, Hector got up as he chuckled, holding his large belly. I insist you get some rest, Erza-san. You just spent the last 9 hours in a cramped-up train. Why don't you rest for tonight? I'm sure the beast won't attack again for a few days. I will have my secretary prepare one of our hotel rooms for you, he said as he calmed down. Sending a glacé over to Naruto, he spoke again. The ever-so-serious Erza nodded her head as she began debating whether or not to agree. She did see a bar that held several sweets she wanted to try. You as well, Naruto-kun. Besides, if it does come back, I'm sure Naruto here would be more than enough to send the beast flying back. Finally deciding, Erza spoke up just as Hector walked back towards the windowsill. I shall take up your offer. But the beast will be gone by tomorrow's lunch, she said as she began walking towards the entrance of the room. Reaching the door handle, she turned around, looking at the still-sitting green-tipped blonde that she spoke. Will you be accompanying me on the mission for the beast? She had already got a feel for his magical power, as well as his reserves, which surprised her as it was slightly higher than Natsu's. The blonde's magical pool seemed calm, much like her master's, which meant that his control was second to none. The mission itself that was sent by Priority Mail was base S-class. If anything, she could have him as backup. Smiling at the girl's enthusiasm at wanting to get the job done, he responded as he began petting the cat on his lap. Yeah, I will be. This town has a lot of my friends in it, not to mention that I came through here when me and my father left home for travels. Got a lot of memories here that I'd like to protect. As he was speaking, Mayor Hector couldn't help but smile at his words. Warad-sama, your boy has come a long way since we were first introduced. He thought as Naruto finished. So yeah? Hey, Erza, right? Getting a nod from her, he continued. I'll meet up with you sometime later tonight once we both settle in our respective rooms. We can introduce ourselves better then. Giving a smile to the blonde, she nodded her head as she opened the door. That'd be great. I'll see you later tonight then. Mayor Hector, I wish you a good night. With her last words, she walked through the door, heading towards the hotel where her room was already ready. Hearing a sigh, Naruto turned his head and looked at the mayor who was sitting down at his desk. His dress jacket hanging off the back of his chair. Something wrong, Gigi? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Being a mayor was like being a Kage. Paperwork, business, and meetings. It's almost endless. Seeing Naruto's concern, he shook his head as he glanced over at the small pile of paperwork. It's nothing, Naruto-kun. It's nothing. Reaching for the stack of papers, he looked up and spoke again. I'm just tired is all, with various bandit attacks and the monster, plus this paperwork. I'll be fine with a good night's rest. Now, why don't you go and get some rest yourself, Naruto-kun? Still worried for the old mayor, he sighed. Resenting himself to get up and leave, the cat jumped back onto his shoulder as he walked towards the door. Pausing just as Erza did, he turned and spoke. Well, tomorrow, Gigi, you'll have one less thing to worry about. Smiling at the young blonde-haired man, Hector shook his head as he waved goodbye to him. Closing the door behind him, Naruto walked towards the entrance of the building, saying goodbye as he passed Kelia. Walking down the steps of the building, he spoke softly to himself as he began walking towards the hotel. Demons, dark magic, dark guilds. Why must creatures and people in this world want to cause chaos? Musing to himself for the majority of the walk to the hotel he would be staying at, he sighed as he couldn't come up with a good answer or reason. Checking into the hotel room the mayor already had set up, he walked down the hall, passing a bar where he would most likely meet Erza at later, as he reached the staircase leading up to the second floor. Going up, he saw his room a few doors down. Entering, he noticed that it was fairly large. A king-size bed, with the softest silk sheets. A small balcony that overlooks the forest instead of the town. The dining area was fairly large as well. As he walked past the entranceway, he leaned his giant scroll up against the wall, while placing his small red Haori over it. The small black cat already jumped from his shoulders to the bed as he saw that it was rolling on the covers. Smiling, he walked into the kitchen, opening the fridge that was in it. He let out a chuckle as he saw how full it was. He must have been expecting me. This fridge is packed full. Leaning back up, he looked around the rest of the kitchen. Several different high-quality teas as well as coffees. Pops must have let him know I'd stop by. Smiling, he reached into one of the cabinets and grabbed a small bowl. Reaching back into the fridge, he pulled out the milk. Pouring a generous amount into the bowl, he placed it on the island that separated the dining area and the beds. The cat, seeing it, jumped from the sheets and made its way towards the bowl. Naruto smiled as he watched the cat lap at the milk before sighing. I'll question it once I take a bath. Taking his clothes off, he made his way to the bathroom as he grabbed a towel that was next to it, not realizing the small cat was staring at him the entire time as he stripped his way towards the bathroom. After a good long bit, he finally exited the shower. Putting on his black jumpsuit leggings that stopped at his mid-lower leg, black socks and a white t-shirt that hugged his toned chest, he walked out of the bathroom, his golden necklace swaying with each step. Entering the living room again, he sat on the bed, ignoring the cat's stare as it lazily sat on one of the pillows. After a few moments of intense silence, he finally spoke. You know, Kuro-chan. His voice was neutral as he spoke. not wanting to make whatever the cat was be angry or go defensive. I can sense the chakra that's in your body. At this, the small black cat closed its eyes as it listened and waited for its turn to speak. And since you haven't attacked me or anything, I let it go earlier, but since I've got a little bit of time to spare, I'll ask anyway. Turning his head straight toward the cat, staring into its golden eyes, he spoke as he summoned his blade and sheathed from the seal on his arm, laying it next to him on the bed. Who and what are you? You certainly aren't a cat. As if responding to his question, Naruto noticed a small smile on the cat's face, reminding him of a Cheshire cat's grin. I'm not surprised that you noticed. Not at all really. You're the only human that has unlocked the use of their chakra outside of the place that I'm from. As it spoke, Naruto merely raised an eyebrow at the deep voice the cat spoke in. You're right, I'm not a cat, I'm ninja, she stated, catching the slight change in Naruto's demeanor. I'm using the tiny bit of magic I have to transform into a cat. Now I have a few questions if I may. Naruto, while listening to her, had his thoughts going a mile a minute. Could the elemental nations have actually found him? Could they have sent someone for him? I wouldn't put it past Jiraiya. And if what I remember of him telling me about the Toad contract, they can't summon me unless they get my approval, no matter what the crisis is. He just nodded his head and narrowed his eyes as the cat wanted to ask the questions. Sitting on the pillow, the cat spoke again. My questions are, how do you know about the ability to use chakra, and who are you and where are you from? You don't seem like you came from my ex-home. After a moment of tense silence, Naruto spoke, his tone cold compared to earlier, which sent chills down the cat's spine. My ability to use chakra comes from my past. My name is my own, you'll have to gain my trust before you hear the rest of it, but for now. He paused, already realizing that the cat didn't have any hostility towards him, though he remembered shinobi were very cunning. You may call me Naruto. I came from a place far away from this land. As soon as the last words escaped his lips, he actually raised both eyebrows. As the cat listened to Naruto speak, she couldn't sense any lies in his words, which made her relax a bit, though his tone was still cold. As he finished, the cat felt like a boulder was lifted off its shoulders. Thank God, it said as it moved and sat next to Naruto on the edge of the bed, staring at the beauty that was the sheath of his sword. I thought you were another one of those strange demons that dark mage created. Raising one of his eyebrows, he began speaking, intent on getting more information out of the small black cat about this dark mage and the demons she talked about. For the next hour, the two talked and shared information. When Naruto had fully realized the cat wasn't from the elemental nations whatsoever, he told her about the nations and its people, which she found fascinating, and said she wanted to go there eventually, which he reluctantly agreed as he needed to do something there. Sometime during the conversation, the cat told Naruto about its home, and how it was destroyed by around 6 demons, or creatures, as she called them. Promising her that he would help her find and eliminate them, he found himself a new friend in the cat. During the conversation, he found out that the cat was actually a woman, that its deep voice was just a ruse for when it reveals its true form. When the cat did, Naruto nearly fainted when he realized the cat was a woman, a beautiful woman his age that was very attractive in his opinion. Her dark mocha-colored skin along with her slender, yet athletic figure went well with her long, flowing, purple hair, meeting Naruto's shoulder when she stood straight up. All in all, she was a piece of art that should be worshipped. Almost fainting from embarrassment when he realized he said she was a piece of art aloud, he knew she would cause him nothing but trouble in the future, as he teased him for the rest of their conversation. Realizing that it was a few minutes prior to the time he told Erza, he got up and stretched. Turning around he spoke to Yoruichi as an almost permanent blush tainted his cheeks. Said woman was currently laying on the bed dressed in black stretch pants, which did nothing but tease his instincts, while she had on a matching backless and strapless top, which was covered by an orange vest with 2 white strips on the shoulders, a large beige sash around her waist as she was only in her socks. Do you want to come with me? It'll only take a bit, though I might have dinner with her as we talk. Seeing the mocha-colored woman smirk, he realized she was up to something. Even though he only knew her for less than half a day, he felt a connection with her. She was the last of her clan in town. Now alone in this world. He was the last of his clan, the Uzumaki, though he didn't know it, and while he wasn't alone in this world, he was striving to make new friends. Yeah, I'll come with you. Even though this bed's warm, your body gives off more heat, she said, and promptly started laughing as she changed back into a cat, her clothes laid on the bed. Jumping on his shoulder as he turned around and picked up his blade. Walking towards the door, he secured his blade on his left side, as Yoruichi attached herself to his shoulder with her chakra. As he reached for the door handle, he felt Yoruichi lick his ear, making him blush as he knew she was female. You know, with a great body like yours, I don't think you should be wearing a tight t-shirt like you are. He knew she was right, but he felt comfortable in this small town. It'll be alright. Most of the people in this town know me already, and I doubt that Erza will even notice, as if I remember correctly, Fairy Tail has a male stripper. He said even if he didn't want to believe Makarov when he was told about Grey. Though I wouldn't be surprised if it was true. Yoruichi, instead of responding, just purred intently as she licked his face again, chuckling at the same reaction from earlier. This is going to be a fun journey. Yoruichi though as the two walked down the hallway. As he reached the bottom floor of the hotel, he saw several young adults running out from the bar, their faces held what looked to be forced smiles. Deciding to question it later, he continued his trek to the bar, Yoruichi in her cat form laying across his shoulder, holding onto him with her chakra, while his blade was at his hip. Walking into the bar, he immediately noticed the scarlet-haired mage sitting at the bar, a width space between her and the rest of the patrons, a large smile on his face as he moved to take a seat next to her, surprising everyone there, as they had already witnessed how she dealt with the young men who had ran out. Sitting down next to her, he called over the bartender, and ordered himself a single ale. Looking over at Erza, he noticed she was way too involved in the cheesecake in front of her, which was halfway gone already. As the bartender came back with his drink, he took a look around the bar, noticing several pictures on the wall behind the bar as well as the different liquors that were there. Taking a drink of his ale as he looked around the room, he could tell it was tense as everyone was staring straight at him, and Erza must be waiting for me to hit on her or something, he thought as he turned back around and coughed into his hand. Hearing the cough, Erza turned her head slightly to see who wanted to talk to her this time. Can't they just leave me alone to eat in peace? She thought before she recognized the man beside her as Naruto. Blushing as she was caught stuffing her face by someone she was supposed to greet, she quickly put down her fork and wiped her mouth before finishing her glass of water. Turning around to fully face him, she acted like she was just waiting for him. Reaching a hand out to him, she spoke. Naruto-san, it's good to see you again. I'm Erza Scarlet, S-class mage of Fairy Tail. Though you probably knew that from the meeting earlier, she said her name with pride as Naruto grabbed her hand for their handshake. Feeling his magic reserves as they shook hands, she knew she was right. His reserves were calm, relaxing almost. Sparing a glance at his blade and the cat as it jumped down onto his lap, she looked back into his eyes as she spoke. It's good to properly meet and greet you. The same, Erza-san. I'm Naruto Sequin, a ranked mage, though I might just surprise you with my strength, he responded as they let go of their handshake, a little taken back from the fierce grip Erza had. Turning back around and facing the wall of different Alesh and wines, he took another swig of his ale as Erza went back to eating her cake, though she was eating slower to make sure she wouldn't embarrass herself. They both sat there for a moment as silence took over before Naruto spoke up, wanting to get a conversation going. So, how is Makarov Gigi nowadays? Erza, who heard him refer to her master like her pink-haired friend, quickly shot her head towards him, her glare making Naruto's sweat drop and wonder what he did. Master is doing great, still a perverted old man, yet he protects everyone in the guild. He was talking about making a trip out to see an old friend and his son in a few more weeks. These past few years, he's been heading out from time to time to his friend of his. Taking another bite of her cake, she continued as she pointed at Naruto with her fork. It's strange, he won't tell us who he's visiting, just that it's his old friend and that we'll meet his son in the future when he comes to join. Getting a sip of her water, she spoke again. The way you referred to Master, I take it you know him? Smiling at her as he scratched Yoruichi behind her ear as she was curled up on his lap, he took another swig of his ale before he spoke, his tone full of joy as he remembered his memories. You could say I know him, he's actually really good friends with my father. He became like a grandfather figure to me, as he would always show up every month for a day or so. Eventually it was a common occurrence, even bringing Alexis with her several times. As he finished, he noticed Erza's eyes became wide, as if she figured something out. Alexis? Turning back around to face her cake, she grabbed the new glass of water and chugged it down before looking back at Naruto. You know Alexis? She asked. Seeing him nod his head, she continued. Was she always as selfish and arrogant as she is now? Hearing Erza say this, Naruto became a little mad, though this confirmed what Makarov had told him. She really has started to go down that path, hasn't she, Gigi? Looking down and into his mug of ale, he watched as the liquid stilled. I won't let her become engrossed with power, I will save her. Quickly changing the topic, Naruto started asking questions about Fairy Tail, getting several descriptions of its members. Both himself and Erza smiled as they shared laughs and stories. Eventually, the stories came to an end as they both got up, knowing they needed their sleep for the mission tomorrow, agreeing that they would both head out at 8, right after their breakfasts, meeting at the entrance of town. Heading to their rooms after saying goodnight, they both wanted it to be tomorrow already, both eager for the mission. As Naruto closed the door to his room, he took off his blade and leaned it up against his scroll. Walking across his room, he cracked open the door to the balcony so the cool night air could flow into the room, setting up a small barrier via Fuinjutsu at the open door so nothing but the cool air could pass through. He walked back to the bed where he saw Yoruichi already under the covers. He sighed as he sat on the other bed next to it. Staring at Yoruichi, he couldn't help but admire her beauty, though he got the distinct feeling that she was going to stick with him for a while. Even though he didn't mind as he remembered his pops and Makarov telling him stories about mages and teams going on missions, he would have to check with her tomorrow. As he was heading to Fairy Tail, what if she didn't want to join? Thoughts for another time. I already told her I'd help her find and eliminate those demons or whatever they are, he thought as he laid down on the comfy sheets, staring up at the ceiling for a moment before he leaned back up, taking his shirt off in the process. Sitting up on the bed, he brought his right hand up and placed it in the ram's seal. Channeling chakra, he muttered to himself. Kai! Seals appeared on his chest as they traveled out towards his limbs before disappearing again. Feeling the effects of his gravity seal fade away, he relaxed back down atop the bed as he let the feeling of sleep take over, not noticing the small silhouette that appeared on his balcony as he closed his eyes. So, you're Minato-chan's tadpole. I finally found ya. Harder to track ya when you're on a completely different continent. I really couldn't believe Kichi-kun when he told me, the figure thought as it readied itself to be summoned back. I'm not sure I want to let them know I found ya. This continent's so peaceful compared to ours, and I don't sense the Kyuubi's presence inside ya. But I have to tell them you're alright, and as strong as ever. Right before the small figure's body disappeared in a puff of smoke, the figure spoke aloud, though not loud enough to wake Naruto. Become the sage that you're destined to become, Naruto-chan. Slowly opening his eyes as the light from over the treetops shone into his room. Bringing an arm up to cover his eyes, he groaned as he laid there for a moment. Ugh. Damn son, he thought as he tossed the sheets to the side. Swinging his body so he was sitting on the bed, he yawned, rubbing his eyes, before looking over at the other bed. Wasn't Yoruichi supposed to be there? Seeing that the bed was made up, looking a little closer and letting his eyes fully adjust to being awake, he saw a small note on the pillow. Getting up, he waltzed over to the other bed and grabbed the note. Note in hand, he walked over to the kitchen area, placing the note down on the small island bar that separated the kitchen and bed area. Quickly getting breakfast ready, he sat down at the small bar eating the eggs and bacon he made. Gulping down his orange juice, he finally read the letter that he presumed Yoruichi left him. Mornin' sunshine. As you can see, I'm not here. I've left to get a few things that I left in the forest. I'll find you when I'm done, as I already decided to travel with you. With 9 lives of luck, Yoruichi-chan. Blinking as he finished reading the letter, he cracked a smile before he let out a small chuckle at her enthusiasm. Remembering that Erza wanted to meet at the gates in the dead of morning, he slowly got up and walked over to his giant sealing scroll. Grabbing it, and walking back to the bed, he opened it up slightly to reveal several seals as he laid it onto the bed. Reaching down and placing his hand flat against the scroll, a clean outfit poofed into existence. A few moments of him getting dressed into his new attire he stretched. He wore a black jacket whose sleeves ended just after his elbows, leaving just a few inches between the end of the wrappings he wore around both his hands. The entire inside of the jacket was a burnt orange, matching the color that covered the middle of the sides on the jacket. Wearing matching black shorts that stopped below his knees, while finishing his attire with black sandals. His jacket wasn't zipped up all the way, revealing the middle of his toned pectorals. He left the hood of his jacket fall down his back as it was smothered by his hair. I need a haircut. I miss my short hair. Guess I can get it cut when I reach Mongolia, he thought as he closed the scroll, bringing his right arm over it as he channeled chakra. Seconds later, the giant scroll disappeared into the storage seal under the wrappings of his arm. Walking back towards the wall where his scroll was sitting, he lifted his blade up and fastened it to his side as he looked around the room, making sure he didn't leave anything. Giving it a once-over, he left, closing the door behind him as he made his way to the entrance of the town. Making his way through the quiet town, waving to the people who were beginning to set up their small shops and business, as he walked past. Looking ahead, he was surprised to see Erza was already waiting for him. Judging by the tapping of her foot, she must have been waiting for a while. Let's hope she wasn't waiting too long, he thought as he continued making his way to the entrance of town. Finally making it to where Erza was waiting patiently, his sweat dropped at the glare she leveled at him. Erza, not being one that was very patient, quickly walked her way to Naruto and slammed her fist into his head, causing him to howl out in pain as he held his head. I've been waiting for a good 30 minutes. Where have you been? We need to go and finish the mission as was stated by Mayor San. She berated him, though she was inwardly surprised that he stood standing, as her normal punches were enough to send Natsu and Gray to the ground. Looking over him, she noticed the cat that was with him last night was missing before she was drawn to the sword at his hip, studying it for a few moments before he spoke, breaking her from her thoughts. Alright. Sorry for making you wait, he said as he stretched one last time, removing the last of the kinks out of his body. Well, let's go, Erza-san. Hector Gigi said the cliff runner should be in the caves near the bottom of the mountain a little inside the forest. Nodding her head, they both left the small town, heading directly into the small forest that covered the bottom of the mountain. Naruto walking a little ways apart from Erza as she still looked a little mad at having to wait for him. Heading through the forest, knowing it would be at least 10 more minutes of walking before they reached the caves, the two talked more. Though as she remembered the talk they both shared the night before, she paused as she remembered something. He said his name was Naruto Sequin, that Master visited him and his father every month. Master left a few days each month. Looking at the blonde through the corner of her eye, she smirked as she figured it out. No wonder he seemed so interested in Fairy Tail. Last night, being too embarrassed at being caught devouring her cake to really think about it, she was sure he was going to join Fairy Tail in the future. So, Naruto-san, are you sure you should be taking on this beast? This is an S-class mission for a reason. I shouldn't even allow you to come with me. Breaking the serene morning sounds that was surrounding them, Erza continued. If you insist on coming with me for this mission, I'm inclined to ask you to remain as backup only. With all the sightings of dark guilds in the area and the tainted description, I shouldn't let him come with me. Grabbing her head with both her hands, she continued, having a mental battle with herself. Especially if he's one of Master's friends. I can't let him get hurt. That's right. I'll tell him to head back, without realizing she and Naruto had already reached the base of the mountain. Turning to face Naruto, she opened her mouth to speak but was stopped as she saw his eyes widen and rush through some sort of hand signs and slammed the ground with both his hands. Doton, Dorihiki. Earth release, earth locking wall. Suddenly, she felt the ground shake. The ground behind them, now noticing that they were standing at the base of the mountain, in front of a cave. She saw cracks forming along the ground directly in front of the forest, and leading towards the sides of the large cave entrance. Seconds later, a large wall made of rock and earth shot out from the ground, reaching the height of a regular house, forming a U shape as it rose around and behind them. Before she even got a chance to ask what he was doing, she heard a loud growl, one that resounded throughout the large clearing in front of the cave. Her eyes shooting wide in shock before she quickly grabbed Naruto, who was standing back up, and jumped away from the spot they were in. Landing on the other side of the clearing, and tossing Naruto lightly to the side, she quickly got ready. Kanso. Kureha no Yoroi, Requip. Black wing armor. Instantly, her body glowed while as her clothes seemed to disappear for a moment, giving Naruto a quick glance at her body's curves. Seconds later, the light died down, and instead of her usual Heart Crew's breastplate, she now adorned in black armor with silver trimmings with crosses on its shoulders and several other places, being very revealing, with her breastplate only covering her breasts and plates covering the sides of her stomach reaching down to her waist guard. Her entire toned stomach was exposed. Wearing what seemed like matching bikini bottoms, a little bit of her thigh was shown as the boots came far up her legs. On her back, 2 large black metal wings were spread, almost acting as hands. With her hair tied in a ponytail, she was now carrying a large sword in her right hand that seemed to complement her armor. Taking in his companion's new appearance, he couldn't help but blush a little at how much skin was being shown. How does that even constitute as armor? Pushing those thoughts out of his mind, he finally felt the energy rolling off the armor and Erza herself. Smiling at the feel and general amount of it, he was proud. His future guildmates would be strong. Get ready, Naruto-san, that's it, and it doesn't look like it wants to leave. Erza announced as she readied herself, staring at the giant rhino-looking beast. Despite having a rhino-shaped body, with one look, anyone could tell this beast was stronger and faster than a normal rhino. Its front 2 legs were hulking with muscle while its back 2 were smaller, yet more agile-looking. Its long tail thrashing about, putting minute cracks on the wall he created every time it smashed against it. Atop its head were 2 horns, the larger one being on the very front of its snout, and a smaller one right behind it. Its red skin with black spots gave for a menacing looks, added the fact that its growls seemed to cause the very earth under it to shake ever so lightly. It was a fearsome beast. Finally getting a good look at the creature that he sensed charging them, he was surprised. It was at least 4 times larger than normal cliff runners, a few feet taller than his wall. Smiling, he drew his master sword with his left, and swung it downwards, leaving a small arc in the ground beneath the blade. Bringing his right hand up to waist height, he focused his lightning magic, causing it to spark around his hand. I'm ready when you are, Erza-san. Looking out the corner of her eye, she inwardly winces when she sees what kind of magic he uses. Just like Alexis, I just hope he's not power-hungry and cocky. Pushing those thoughts aside, she focused most of her attention on the blade held in his left hand. The pure power that it seemed to be radiating, almost light-like in essence, was amazing, reminding her of Master's light magic. After seeing he was ready, she nodded her head and faced forwards, staring at the great beast that was growling and glaring at the two. Let's go! Kicking off the ground, Erza shot forwards. Follow my lead! She yelled as she flanked the beast's right side, bringing her sword down on its skin. Her eyes grew wide as she realized she only made a small cut on its iron-like skin. Jumping away, she looked over and saw Naruto on the opposite side of the beast, as well as blood spraying out from the wound he inflicted before he jumped away and landed on the wall horizontally, only having a few moments to wonder how he managed to injure the beast before she had to block the massive tail that was thrashing about. Blocking the tail, she was still sent flying towards the large wall that was erected from the ground by Naruto. Slamming into it, she winced as she pushed herself out and fell to the ground. Standing back up, she saw that the beast was charging towards her, tempting to ram her. Jumping away, she looked over towards Naruto, who had his blade coated in his lightning magic. I see. He used his magic to coat his blade, giving it a higher piercing rate. Seeing that the beast was focusing on Erza, Naruto jumped from behind the beast and landed on the wall. Sticking to it with chakra, he sheathed his sword and kicked off the wall, leaving cracks in it as he flew to the beast's large back. Seeing this, Erza smirked as she continued dodging the beast's tail that was now stretching and thrashing about, trying to hit her. Getting a little bit of distance, she coated her blade with a sharp coat of her magic, making it gleam in the morning sun. Dodging another tail lash, she quickly jumped off the ground and flew straight towards the beast, slamming her sword in its side as she flew past it, leaving a large gash across its stomach. Seeing that Erza had flew past the beast, he finally made his way to the beast's head. Bringing both his hands up, he slammed his fists down on its head, which flew to this chance to study this beast's large horns. He grew angry, seeing a small black and red emblem-like crest on the bottom of its large horn. Growling angrily that someone would intentionally stoop so low as to place black magic on a normally peaceful creature, he placed his hands on the beast's head as he turned his and yelled for Erza. Erza cut off its horn now. Nodding her head, she focused her magic into her blade. Out of the range of the large beast's thrashing tail, she jumped above the beast. Steadying herself in the air with the two large wings on her back, she readied her attack as she flew towards its large horn. Kureha, Gessen, Black Wing, Moon Flash, her back to the large beast as its loud roar was heard through the forest and mountain. A large thump was heard as its large horn hit the ground, the cliff runner's head swinging madly from side to side as it was thrashing about in pain. Trying his best to stay atop the beast, Naruto placed both hands just above the beast's eyes. Quickly turning around, she witnessed Naruto flooding his hands with his thunder and lightning magic as he channeled it through the giant beast's head. Stunning and effectively killing the beast quickly, she let out a breath as she walked towards the now still beast. Hopping off the beast, he sighed, still completely mad that somebody or something placed black magic on this creature. Demons, I'll rid the world of the lot of them. Pushing those thoughts away, he dusted his jacket off and spoke. Alright, let's head back to Hector Jiggs and tell him the good news. Nodding her head, she changed back into her normal Heart Crew's armor and attire, giving Naruto once again a good view of her shape. After she changed, she brought her arm up and tapped the air in front of her, creating ripples in the air. Reaching in the ripples, she pulled out a rope, which she then used to tie up the large horn that was in front of the large beast. Raising an eyebrow at her actions, he just shrugged and walked over towards the large wall he created to keep the damage to a minimum. Placing his hand upon said wall, he cancelled out the technique, making the wall go back into the ground. Turning back, he walked towards the beast. Standing in front of it, he ran through several hand seals, ending as his fingers interlocked. Doton, Ganban Q, Earth Release, Bedrock Coffin. Suddenly, several pieces of earth arose around the large dead beast, encompassing him. Even Erza stopped what she was doing once she knew what he was doing. As the large pieces of earth finally enclosed around the dead beast, it slowly shrunk back down into the earth, leaving nothing but the regular ground where it used to lay. Turning around, he watched as Erza finished tying the beast's horn up. Lifting it up and placing it on her shoulder, she nodded her head and started walking back towards the village. Following her, they both left the clearing, not seeing a lone figure atop one of the bare cliffs on the mountainside before it vanished. Being too quiet for her liking, she tried to start up a conversation. Lightning and earth magic? What else can you do, I wonder? Even though it was quiet, her curiosity had piqued once she looked at the blade on his hip again. The power that was rolling off of it earlier, nowhere to be found at the moment. What was that sword? What was the name of it? Well, I also practice sword magic, and in accordance with my sword, a little bit of light magic, replying with his hand on the handle of his sword as they passed through the forest. Light magic? Now she was hooked. If Naruto could use any kind of light magic like her master, then he was good in her books. No one with evil in their hearts could use light magic. But sword magic as well? Maybe she could get a spar from him in the future. Other than exchanging small banter between each other, the two quietly headed back towards the town, now only a few minutes away. After Erza finishes and turns in the mission, I wonder if she'd mind me traveling with her back to Fairy Tail? Continuing their walk back to the village, his thoughts went back to his father, and when he remembered telling him of his summoning contract, the shocked face he had when he summoned his own personal toad, Gamakichi, and the explanation of how important it is to keep it a secret that he's not in the nations anymore. Taking a glacé at his companion next to him, he smirked. Hey Erza, wanna see something awesome? Getting a raised eyebrow from the red-headed woman as they both stopped walking. Quickly going through hand seals, he slammed his right palm on the ground. Kuchios no Jutsu. Summoning technique. Seconds later, as the large puff of smoke vanished, all throughout the forest a loud scream was heard from the redhead, though, if anyone would have asked, Naruto refused to say what it was, though they could tell it was funny. Erza, after a very short and loud girly scream, quickly took in the sight before her. A large toad, red with purple markings around its eyes, stood at its full height way above the trees. In its mouth was a large pipe and around its body was a kimono top. Under its right hand was a large dagger. Hanging from its neck was a large bead necklace. Yo, Mount Myaboku, I can't find him anywhere. How could he have disappeared for so long? A tale older-looking man with long, spiky white hair trailing down his back was sitting in front of a large elderly toad with a pipe in his hand. Bringing his hands up and running them through his hair, he sighed. It's been 10 whole years, and not one of my spies have heard or seen anything. Akatsuki is finally making their move for the Jinchurikis. Hopping down in front of him were the two elder toads, Ma and Pa. Finally having enough of watching their summoner wallow in his sadness and despair, Pa apologized mentally towards Naruto even though he's never met him in person before. Jiraiya-chan. I'm not allowed to tell you where he is since he hasn't allowed us to summon him here yet, but I can tell you that he is in the best shape of his life. He's stronger than ever before. Hearing this from the elder toads, and knowing that he can't force them to summon Naruto back unless it's a life or death situation, his mood lightened up. Standing up from in front of the large sleeping elder toad sage, he spoke. Well, that's the best news I've heard in these past 10 years, Pa. I just wish I knew what happened to him. No. We need to be there for him when the Akatsuki come for him. I need to be there and be the godfather I never was. Turning around and walking out of the large cave, he sighed as Ma and Pa followed him before jumping on his shoulders to steady the natural energy that flowed through his body. As he walked out from the waterfall entrance, There's a storm brewing, and the nations need him, for he is the child of prophecy. With both elder toads nodding their heads, they said their goodbyes as Jiraiya vanished, presumably to tell Tsunade about what he had heard. Gamakichi was summoned again a few moments ago. It's good that Naruto-chan's still friends with him, Ma said as the two elder toads hopped back towards their little home. I wonder what stories he'll tell us this time. Last time, and the past few times, Naruto-chan had him as a delivery boy, giving love letters to this Kazuhana-chan. After sharing a quick laugh, both elder toads had the same thought going through their heads at the state of the elemental nations. There's a storm brewing out there, Naruto-chan, and you're in the middle of it. What if Naruto finds fairy temple inheritance in Fairy Tail? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoyed this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.